Chapter 154. Let's go to the next level, Meng Qi said as she walked towards the edge of the grass. Are we still going to wait here later? As she spoke, she stood at the edge and looked back at the crowd. Let's wait. Xing stared at Meng Qi in a daze. Okay. Meng Qi nodded. She took a step forward, and her cyan-clothed figure instantly disappeared from where she stood. The remaining people stood in place and looked at each other. Chu Tianfeng's expression didn't look too good. He looked at Qin Xiuma, then at Xing, and finally at Pei Mufeng and Li Che. Qin Xiuma was silent. His eyelids drooped slightly, covering the light in his eyes. Li Che stood in place blankly. He looked at the place where Meng Qi disappeared, and then at Xing. What do you mean? Only Pei Mufeng's expression didn't change. He just stood in place calmly, but he didn't leave immediately. After a while, Xing couldn't help but speak first. She has a Dao companion? When did Meng Qi have a Dao companion? She still couldn't believe her ears. When did this happen? Why didn't I know about it at all? Dao companion. Chu Tianfeng stared blankly at the place where Meng Qi disappeared, and suddenly jumped up. She has a Dao companion. When did this happen? Who is that guy? Could it be? His expression was uncertain, and he turned to look at Qin Xiuma. She has been with Ji Wujiong since then. Could it be this guy? Chu Tianfeng's expression instantly became extremely ugly. Impossible. Xing said, hasn't Ji Wujiong always wanted Meng Qi to be his disciple? How naive. Chu Tianfeng coldly snorted. Although the spiritual energy on that Ji Wujiong's body belongs to the cultivators of our 3,000 worlds, his style of doing things is quite similar to those unscrupulous fellows in the demon realm. Do you think he would care about a disciple? He paused for a moment and then said in a bad mood, and you saw it too. After leaving the Starfall Sea, he obviously knew something. Meng Qi suddenly got close to him, and even agreed to call him master. Maybe this despicable guy is using the same method to blackmail Meng Qi again. The more Chu Tianfeng spoke, the more he felt that he was right. This guy has been pestering Meng Qi. Who knows what his purpose is? He has never been a good person. Xing. She turned and looked at Qin Xiuma. What do you think? You forgot that in the Starfall Sea, Meng Qi was holding something in his hand. Qin Xiuma's tone was indifferent. It's more likely that it's that person. He didn't say who it was, but the few people here, except for Li Che's two fellow disciples, almost all of them had fought side by side in the Starfall Sea. Everyone immediately reacted. But Xing was so shocked that she almost couldn't speak. After saying, but for a long time, she didn't continue. After a while, she shook her head desperately. But if it's that person then, she licked her dry lips. She was clearly speaking, but her voice sounded so distant. If it's that person, then Meng Qi is our. Xing still felt that it was inconceivable. Before she finished speaking, she shook her head. The Demon Lord token appeared once every 100 years in the demon realm. The great celestial demons needed to fight for the Demon Lord token again to determine the position of the Demon Lord. Therefore, although there were many geniuses in the Sky Demon White Tiger clan, and demon monarchs often appeared, they didn't occupy an absolute ruling position. Otherwise, some ambitious and powerful sky demons wouldn't be eager to make a move every time the demon monarch token was about to appear. Just like this time. Because there was a rumor that the great sky demon Yun Qingyan, who was the demon monarch at the time, cultivated a heaven-defying formation. A great tribulation fell on him together by the will of the three realms. He failed to pass the tribulation and disappeared after being seriously injured. Those who had the ability to compete for the demon monarch token were all ecstatic. The situation in the demon realm changed, and all the major forces took action. The main forces in the demon realm had always been divided into three factions. One faction was the Qin clan, and was willing to join forces with the cultivators of the three realms to deal with the demon realm. They were willing to be on good terms with them, and even have normal business dealings. One faction was the demon cultivators who remained neutral. They didn't like or dislike the cultivators of the three realms, but they wouldn't harm the human race either. Another faction felt that the demon cultivators were the masters of heaven and earth. They never looked down on the cultivators of the three realms. Of course, they also looked down on the demon cultivators. Yun Qingyan didn't directly express his support for the cultivators of the three realms, but his trusted subordinate, Su Junmo, stayed in the three realms for a long time. He was relatively friendly to the three realms. When he was the demon monarch, he was very straightforward and didn't do anything to govern. He didn't restrict the affairs of the various races of the demon realm, and allowed them to develop freely. Therefore, most of the great sky demon cultivators put him in the first faction. Those Yao who wanted to develop and strengthen the demon realm, and have the demon cultivators become the masters of the world, naturally didn't like his conduct. But Yun Qingyan was too strong. Si Kongxing had never seen Yun Qingyan fight, but she had heard the elders of the clan mention Yun Qingyan's genius and strength countless times. This was the youngest demon monarch in the history of the demon realm. He was so strong that even the Yao cultivators who opposed him had to admit that if the demon realm could produce a great sky demon cultivator, who could step through the void and ascend, it would be Yun Qingyan. What Si Kongxing heard about Yun Qingyan was a glorious legend for hundreds of years. It was said that he had never been defeated in a fight. Ever since he obtained the demon monarch token for the first time 300 years ago, those great sky demons who originally had ambitions for the demon monarch token no longer dared to act rashly. There were as many Yao cultivators in the demon realm who admired him as there were stars in the sky. They could be ranked from the first heaven to the ninth heaven of the demon realm, and so on. But such a powerful Yun Qingyan had actually been injured. And he was seriously injured. A year ago, when such a rumor first spread in the demon realm, no Yao cultivator believed it. Si Kongxing had also heard about it. Although her father didn't participate in the management of the Scarlet Fox clan's affairs, he was still a Scarlet Fox aristocrat. But at the time, even the Scarlet Fox clan didn't dare to believe it. In their eyes, the fact that Yun Qingyan was injured was a big joke and a lie. Anyone who had seen him in action before wouldn't believe such a lie. Those Yao cultivators who didn't dare to compete with Yun Qingyan for the position of demon monarch, but still had ambitions for the position, even started to become vigilant. They felt that this was a rumor deliberately spread by Yun Qingyan to lure the snake out of its hole. He wanted to capture all the ambitious great sky demons in one fell swoop. During that time, they became more and more respectful and cautious. They didn't even dare to reveal their ambitions in their sleep. But slowly, this rumor became more and more intense. Yun Qingyan didn't appear in front of everyone again. Some ceremonies that had to be presided over by the demon monarch were also handed over to his subordinates, or the elders of the White Tiger clan. About a year ago, the oldest elder of the celestial demon Phoenix clan had successfully undergone 8 nirvanas. He already had one hand on the edge of the heavenly Tao, and could step into the Mahayana realm after 1 more nirvanas. At his 1600th birthday banquet, which was also the day he successfully underwent 8 nirvanas, Yun Qingyan was absent again. This time, the voices of the demon realm started to change slightly. As a demon monarch, Yun Qingyan was the true king of all demons in the demon realm. He didn't have to participate in any banquets that he didn't want to. However, this celestial demon Phoenix clan elder was also the oldest elder in the demon realm. Before Yun Qingyan became a demon monarch, he once found a young genius of the Phoenix clan who was as famous as him. The two of them fought under the Phoenix tree for 7 days and 7 nights. In the end, not only did he defeat that person, but he also took a branch from the Phoenix tree and left. That battle made Yun Qingyan completely famous, and it also made the patriarch of the Phoenix clan a little angry. However, this elder wasn't angry. Instead, he smiled and sent someone to deliver the array formation that the Phoenix clan used to refine Dharma treasures with Phoenix branches. This was the world's famous true array formation of the Great Fire Array. Only this powerful fire, which could burn all things, could refine the world's hardest Phoenix tree into the shape that cultivators needed. Although the Great Fire Array had always existed in the outside world, only the Phoenix clan knew how to make true arrays. The great celestial demon elder said that the various clans of the demon realm had been fighting since ancient times. However, these fights weren't for the sake of demon cultivators fighting to the death. Instead, they were for the sake of making the demon realm more prosperous and powerful. Therefore, he didn't wish for this matter to cause any rift between the two young celestial demon royals. After Yin Qingyan learned of this, he personally went to thank him. The two of them drank and chatted merrily under the phoenix tree. Later on, Yin Qingyan would definitely attend the Phoenix Clan Elder's decennial birthday banquet. Even after he obtained the Demon Monarch token and became a Demon Monarch, this never changed. Therefore, everyone felt that something was amiss when Yin Qingyan didn't attend the Phoenix Clan Elder's 1600th birthday banquet and the 8 successful Nirvanic rebirths. The Celestial Demon White Tiger clan sent gifts. They even specially said that a portion of the gifts were sent by the Demon Monarch. Yin Qingyan happened to be in seclusion and was unable to come. However, after the Phoenix Clan Elder's birthday banquet, the ambitions that some demon cultivators had suppressed for hundreds of years suddenly sprouted like seeds that had encountered the spring rain. They didn't dare to do anything to Yin Qingyan immediately. To be cautious, some great celestial demons tried to use the boundary crack between the Trichiliocosm and the demon realm to send some ferocious demon cultivators over. Although Yin Qingyan didn't care much about the development of the various clans of the demon realm in the demon realm, he never allowed them to cross the boundary and invade the cultivators of the Trichiliocosm. Especially those demon cultivators who crossed the boundary. They were often ordinary or weak cultivators at the Qi refinement and foundation establishment stages. In the past, when such a thing happened, the demon cultivators who were caught crossing the boundary only had one word to say: death. But this time he didn't care. Those great celestial demons even deliberately sent the demon cultivators they sent over to do some excessive things in the Trichiliocosm, such as hurting a few disciples of the top 10 sections. They also knew that one of Yin Qingyan's trusted subordinates, White Fox Su Junmo, was in the Trichiliocosm all year round. These matters would definitely reach his ears. Unexpectedly, Yin Qingyan still didn't care. Rumors of the Demon Monarch's injury spread once again. More and more ambitious people became restless. They researched the rumors of the Demon Lord's injuries over and over again. In the end, they came to the conclusion that Yin Qingyan might really have been severely injured by the will of the 3 realms. It was very likely that he would never recover. Those great celestial demons who had ambitions for the position of Demon Monarch were overjoyed. Seeing that the Demon Monarch token was about to reappear in less than a year, they began to prepare frantically. In the beginning, everyone was worried that Yin Qingyan would suddenly appear and capture them all. But as time passed, not only did Yin Qingyan not appear, even the celestial demon White Tiger clan fell silent. Those great celestial demons became increasingly arrogant. In the past year, the demon realm had changed. Even Xing's father felt some pressure. Xing's mother was a cultivator from the Trichiliocosm. Her father didn't participate in the management of the clan's affairs, and wasn't even a member of the Council of Elders. Their family had always been ostracized in the clan because of this reason. The Crimson Fox clan was definitely the third faction. They looked down on the human race from the bottom of their hearts. Later, Xing followed her clan brother, who she didn't like, to the Trichiliocosm to find her mother, whom she had never met. She had never thought of doing evil with her clan brother and harming the human race. So when she met Meng Qi and the others, she willingly left with her. She didn't expect that she would come to this day. These things quickly flashed through her mind. This was what her father told her the night before she left the demon realm. He also told her that if the real demon lord was replaced by someone else, then Xing shouldn't return to the demon realm. If she could find her mother, she would stay by her mother's side. If she couldn't find her, he gave her a lot of spirit stones. It was enough for her to live a good life in the Trichiliocosm. Xing thought of the serious and melancholy expression on her father's face when she left. Of course, she wouldn't leave her father alone in the demon realm. But she still came to the Trichiliocosm. She also wanted to find her mother, whom she had never seen before, and ask her if she was willing to be with her and her father. If she wasn't willing, she would return to the demon realm. Even if the world there turned upside down, she would stay by her father's side. Xing. A hand waved in front of Xing. She came back to her senses and met Chu Tianfeng's slightly furrowed brows. Ah, what? What are you thinking? Chu Tianfeng looked at her suspiciously. Do you know something? Xing opened her mouth. The gazes of the people around her were all focused on her. These people were indeed her life and death friends, but they were only cultivators from the Trichiliocosm. Xing hesitated. Regarding the demon realm's battle of the demon monarchs, even she could only hear about it from others. Wouldn't it be useless to tell them? Ranwen, why did you stop halfway? Chu Tianfeng frowned and asked casually, what is Mengqi to you? The demon empress. Xing said in a small voice. Chu Tianfeng. Chu Tianfeng, what? If it's that lord, Mengqi should be our demon empress. Xing took a deep breath. The demon lord token appears once in 100 years, and it happens to be now. It's time for the demon lord token to reappear and fight for the position of the demon lord. She decided to tell these friends what she knew. After all, it was about Mengqi. Moreover, Xing's gaze swept across the faces of these friends. In fact, for people like Pei Mufeng and Li Che, they didn't say much. But probably because they had experienced life and death together, and fought side by side in the Starfall Sea, and they were all friends of Mengqi, she was willing to believe them. Before the new demon lord appears, if Mengqi really becomes Dao companions with that lord, then she will be our demon empress. Xing still felt a little awkward calling Mengqi this way. Chu Tianfeng. He sucked in a breath of cold air and suddenly asked, but hasn't your Yao monarch been a Yao monarch for 300 years? Doesn't he have any other women? Didn't you say that your great heaven demons can have many women? Just like the lord of the devil mansion, and the great realm masters of the devil realm? Chu Tianfeng's tone became anxious. Here, we can only have one Dao companion after becoming Dao companions. No. Xing's face darkened. The current demon lord is from the heaven demon white tiger race. So what? Chu Tianfeng was stunned and didn't understand. The heaven demon white tiger race has produced many demon lords, but they have never had other concubines. There is only one demon empress, Xing said. She snorted and couldn't help but say, don't think I don't know. Although there can only be one Dao companion in the 3,000 worlds, many cultivators still have concubines. Their Dao companion might not even be their official wife. They just cultivate together. Xing paused and said, for us demon cultivators, Dao companions are wives. The demon lord's Dao companion must be the demon empress. Zai. She waved her hand. Why did you interrupt me just now? What I wanted to say was, if Mengqi really became Dao companions with the demon lord, then the demon realm should have a demon empress now. Even if I'm in the 3,000 worlds, it's impossible for me to not know about this. This is a major event second only to the demon lord's ascension. Even if I don't know, Su Junmo definitely knows and will tell me. I see. Chu Tianfeng nodded thoughtfully. So you don't think it's that person? It shouldn't be. Xing said. So is it really that bastard Ji Wujiong? Chu Tianfeng was about to go crazy again. I definitely won't accept it. That guy doesn't look like a good person. He's too evil. Mengqi might as well be with that hypocritical Xue Chengxian than with him. Xing. Xing's words also make sense. Besides, the demon lord should be in the demon realm now. Mengqi probably hasn't seen him for a long time. Qin Xiuma's tone was still calm. As he spoke, he turned his head and looked at Pei Mufeng thoughtfully. Chu Tianfeng followed his gaze and was stunned. Could it be you? It's not me, Pei Mufeng said lightly. Chu Tianfeng simply looked at Su Zijuan standing beside Pei Mufeng. It's not me. Su Zijuan shook his head repeatedly. How could it be me? Chu Tianfeng looked at Li Che. It's not me, it's not me. Li Che shook his head quickly. Then who could it be? Chu Tianfeng frowned and finally looked at Yan Xian, who no one was familiar with. This young master of Mirror Moon Sky didn't say much from the beginning. After Mengqi left, he was silent and stood at the edge of the group. But Mengqi's relationship with him was obviously good. Could it be you? Chu Tianfeng looked at Yan Xian and asked. His tone wasn't rude. After all, they all knew that Yan Xian became like this because he was exhausted and seriously injured from stopping the invasion of the demon realm. No, Yan Xian said coldly. But do you know the Broken Space Sect? Broken Space Sect? Chu Tianfeng was stunned and looked back at Qin Xiaoma. Of course I know. But what did the Broken Space sect have to do with Ming Qi? Before we entered the 10 Extremes Mountain, the Broken Space sect chose a new sect master, Ling Ji. Yan Xian said. He personally came to see Ming Qi. Chu Tianfeng. He was tongue-tied. But Ling Ji is more than 20 years older than Ming Qi. He's the sect master of the Broken Space sect, an expert of the insightful truth realm. It's not an exaggeration to say that he's the best swordsman in the world. Yan Xian said. If you've seen him, you'll know that a difference of more than 20 years is nothing to him. I remember now. Chu Tianfeng suddenly said. The Broken Space sect sent people to find Ming Qi, so he was tongue-tied. No way. Could it really be him? Who knows? Yan Xian said as he walked towards the edge of the grassland. Instead of thinking here, why don't we wait for Ming Qi to come out and ask him directly? If we don't go to the next stage, he'll probably come out. As he spoke, he took a step forward and disappeared from the edge of the grassland. He's really... Chu Tianfeng stared at the place where he disappeared. He's a bit arrogant. He's a genius to begin with, so he's qualified. Pei Mufeng's tone was still indifferent. Let's go too. As he spoke, he stepped forward and also disappeared from the edge of the grassland. I'm going too, Xikong Xing said. Ming Qi seems to value this trip to the 10 Extremes Mountain very much. I have to help him as much as I can. After the red-clothed girl finished speaking, her figure flashed and she left the grassland. Ming Qi has helped me a lot, and this time he saved me again. I have to help him as much as I can. Li Che also hurriedly followed. Soon, the other 2 disciples from the Surging Waves Academy and the Falling Star Pavilion also left the grassland. Only Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiaoma remained. What do you think? Chu Tianfeng grabbed his hair in annoyance. Qin Xiaoma's tone was a bit cold. If it's really Ji Wujiang, can you beat him now? If you don't agree, what's the use? So after this 10 Extremes Mountain, our cultivation will directly increase by a large realm. He said. At that time, we'll have the qualifications to decide what to do. Let's go. Chu Tianfeng didn't hesitate anymore, and strode towards the edge of the grassland. Qin Xiaoma watched him leave, but he didn't move. After a while, 2 men wearing black robes like him walked towards him. Junior brother Qin. The man walking on the left smiled slightly and greeted him. When you suddenly disappeared, I thought you... Before the man could finish his sentence, he suddenly took a few steps back, and a trace of anger flashed across his face. Junior brother Qin, what are you doing? As he spoke, he panted, and looked at Qin Xiaoma's eyes, and a trace of panic quickly flashed across his face. The other man beside him was Wei Yuanzhong, whom Ming Qi had seen that day at Mirror Moon Sky. Junior brother Qin. Wei Yuanzhong also frowned. What are you doing? Junior brother Zhao is also concerned about you. Concerned? Qin Xiaoma put his right index and middle fingers together, and lightly flicked. Cloud Treading Peak was a rare sect that cultivated both sword and art. In general, they mainly cultivated the sword, and magic arts were secondary. His life-bound sword silently floated in the air, and the tip of the sword flashed with a bit of cold light, pointing directly at Zhao Jianian, who had spoken to him at the beginning. Speaking of which, I should be grateful to senior brother Zhao. Qin Xiaoma's lips curved slightly, but there was no smile on his face. His gaze was extremely cold, and like his extremely sharp life-bound sword, it flashed with cold light. He looked at Zhao Jianian like this and said coldly, otherwise there wouldn't be this. Qin Xiaoma's last 2 words were very vague, and his voice was very low. Wei Yuanzhong reflexively asked, what? Encounter. He slowly said, but the movements of his hands were not slow at all. His life-bound sword was wrapped in a sharp aura, and as fast as lightning, it stabbed toward Zhao Jianian. Zhao Jianian was shocked. This sword was really too fast, so fast that in the blink of an eye, he didn't even hear Qin Xiaoma's 2 words, and the cold sword was already in front of him. He already knew that his talent was inferior to Qin Xiaoma, and he also knew that junior brother Qin was the one that Master truly valued, and was the future sect master in Master's heart. But why? Junior brother Qin had clearly entered the sect later than him, and before he entered, he was the most outstanding of the younger generation of disciples, and the one that Master valued the most. And he had already worked hard enough. His talent was just a bit lacking, but he was already second in the sect, wasn't he? Zhao Jianyan's expression also darkened. Even if he lost to this junior brother Qin by a bit, the gap between the two of them wouldn't be too great. It was only because Master was biased that he said that junior brother Qin's future was limitless, and that they would be left far behind. Zhao Jianyan summoned his life-bound sword, preparing to counterattack, and said loudly, "Eldest senior brother, you see, it's him." He didn't even have time to finish his sentence before there was a long ding sound, and the two's life-bound swords had already clashed dozens of times in an instant. But because Qin Xiuma's sword was too fast and too terrifying, like lightning, it only sounded like a long sound. Zhao Jianyan didn't dare to speak, and gritted his teeth to block with all his might. So fast. Junior brother Qin's sword was really fast. And so strong. In just a moment, the back of Zhao Jianyan's robe was soaked. The life-bound sword was connected to its master's mind, and Qin Xiuma's strike after strike against his sword also seemed to be attacking his divine sense. So strong. He was going to lose. Zhao Jianyan's face was ashen. It had only been a year, so how did junior brother Qin become so strong? He couldn't believe it. He couldn't be so strong and improve so quickly. Junior brother Qin. Wei Yuanzhong finally realized that something was wrong. This junior brother who had disappeared for a year really wanted junior brother Zhao Jianyan's life. He hurriedly waved his fingers, and his life-bound sword appeared next to him. "Stop first or I'll attack," Wei Yuanzhong said. "I'll count to 3. Junior brother Qin, if you don't withdraw your sword, I'll attack." 1. As he spoke, he anxiously looked at Qin Xiuma, and then at Zhao Jianyan with worry. Zhao Jianyan suddenly grunted as Qin Xiuma's sword slashed across his left arm. Although he blocked quickly, a string of blood still rolled down his arm. 2. Wei Yuanzhong hurriedly counted again. "Junior brother Qin, we're all from the same sect, so what can't we talk about? You stop first." "Ugh," Zhao Jianyan grunted again. This time, Qin Xiuma's shoulder slashed across his left leg, leaving behind 2 deep and narrow wounds. So fast. Zhao Jianyan's face was pale. He found that he could barely see junior brother Qin's sword. His opponent's life-bound sword seemed to transform into sword shadows, and it even carried a biting cold air. Not only were his wounds very painful, they were also very cold. Even his blood seemed to be frozen into ice. What was eldest senior brother doing? Why wasn't he counting to 3? Zhao Jianyan became anxious. He was definitely not junior brother Qin's match, but if eldest senior brother joined forces with him, then he would have a chance. No matter how much Qin Xiuma improved in this year, he couldn't be stronger than him and his senior brother joining forces. When the time came, he could wait for junior brother Qin to be suppressed, then pretend that he wasn't in a hurry to withdraw his sword. After all, this was 10 Extremes Mountain. No matter what happened, no one would know. 3. Wei Yuanzhong counted loudly. "Junior brother Qin, you should stop." "Okay." Qin Xiuma suddenly responded crisply. This time, both Zhao Jianyan and Wei Yuanzhong were stunned. Qin Xiuma's life-bound sword had already been withdrawn. Zhao Jianyan's pressure was greatly reduced, and he stood in place stunned. Wei Yuanzhong's life-bound sword was already about to attack, but he hurriedly called it back. He revealed a slight smile, and looked at his 2 junior brothers. "That's right. What kind of misunderstanding can't be cleared up between fellow disciples?" Zhao Jianyan snorted coldly. The 3 wounds on his body were still bleeding, and the coldness in his wounds was getting thicker and thicker, making him feel very uncomfortable. However, he knew that junior brother Qin wouldn't dare to attack with him and eldest senior brother at the same time. "Umph." He snorted coldly in his heart. His life-bound sword was still hanging by his side. With eldest senior brother here, he wasn't worried that Qin Xiuma would do anything else. As Zhao Jianyan thought this, he took out some medicine for external injuries from his storage bag, and prepared to bandage his wounds first. "Junior brother Qin," Wei Yuanzhong said warmly. "What happened? Where did you go this year? We couldn't find you, and Master was very worried." Later, we heard that you were together with that medical cultivator girl, and everyone went to Starfall City to look for you. That's right. Wei Yuanzhong said as he looked at Zhao Jianian. Is there some misunderstanding between you and junior brother Zhao? Weren't you two very close in the past? Junior brother might have misunderstood me. As Zhao Jianian treated his wounds, he glanced at Qin Xiaoma and said, at the time, junior brother was going through his tribulation. I said that I would protect junior brother, but that day, master sent me to do something. I originally thought that I would be able to rush back before junior brother's tribulation, but who knew? He sighed and looked into Qin Xiaoma's eyes. He said sincerely, this matter was indeed senior brother's fault. Later, junior brother disappeared, and master severely punished senior brother. Junior brother, now you have already. He tilted his head slightly, and his expression turned cold. In just a year, Qin Xiaoma had already reached the spirit-severing stage. And it seemed that he had not just entered the spirit-severing stage. Was this guy a lunatic? When he left, he was clearly not even a nascent soul cultivator. Yes, yes. Wei Yuanzhong also echoed. Master did severely punish junior brother Zhao, and made him face the wall for 8 months. Later, he even sent him everywhere to look for you. Junior brother Qin, let's forget about this matter. Your senior brother also knows that he was wrong. Your relationship in the past was so good, and he didn't do it on purpose. Moreover, junior brother Qin, when you reached the nascent soul stage from the golden core stage, everyone thought that it was a small matter for you. Wei Yuanzhong really felt that Qin Xiaoma was making a big fuss over nothing. Although Zhao Jianian did not do right in this matter, it was only a tribulation from the golden core stage to the nascent soul stage. Qin Xiaoma was also a famous genius disciple in the sect. Everyone thought that this was a very easy matter for him. Even if there was no one to protect him, it was not a big deal. Later, Qin Xiaoma really failed to pass the tribulation, and even went into Qi deviation. Their fellow disciples at the cloud-treading peak were all stunned. This disciple who was doted on the most by master turned out to be nothing more than this. So later, Zhao Jianian cried and knelt in front of master, begging him to punish him because he promised to protect his junior brother. In the end, because he went to do something master asked him to do, he was delayed a little and did not return in time. To be honest, everyone, including Wei Yuanzhong, was a little disapproving. Even if Zhao Jianian returned in time, for something like tribulation transcendence, if you failed, you failed. The help your fellow disciples could provide was too limited. Everyone even comforted Zhao Jianian, who was in pain and self-blame, and advised him not to be sad. As long as they could find Qin Xiaoma and bring him back, master would have a way to save him. Wei Yuanzhong also thought so. He really did not feel that junior brother Zhao Jianian had done too much wrong. Moreover, after Qin Xiaoma went missing, Wei Yuanzhong also saw his self-blame and pain. He knew that his two junior brothers had a very good relationship, and even often comforted Zhao Jianian, telling him to pull himself together as soon as possible. Wei Yuanzhong never would have thought that for such a small matter, Qin Xiaoma would actually directly attack without saying anything, and even injure Zhao Jianian in the blink of an eye. I heard that senior brother Zhao already got married? Qin Xiaoma did not directly answer this question. He faintly glanced at Zhao Jianian, his gaze still very cold. Yes. Zhao Jianian also did not know what he was thinking, and could only say, junior brother was unable to make it to this wedding banquet. After we leave 10 Extremes Mountain, senior brother will treat us, and we will not return until we are drunk. Wei Yuanzhong also revealed a smile. Junior brother Zhao's Dao companion is a famous beauty in the southern land. Junior brother Qin should also know. He paused, and seeing that the atmosphere was already much more harmonious than before, he also relaxed a little. Speaking of which, if junior brother Qin meets a female cultivator he likes, you can also find a Dao companion. Wei Yuanzhong looked at Qin Xiaoma, and laughed a little mockingly. That little medical cultivator just now, she seems pretty good. Her heart is also good. When he said this, he suddenly remembered that his usually proud junior brother actually helped that medical cultivator girl collect spirit stones, and felt a bit awkward. However, it could also be seen that this junior brother Qin really treated her well. She is pretty good. Qin Xiaoma smiled. Seeing him also smile, Wei Yuanzhong relaxed even more. Even Zhao Jianian let out a slight sigh of relief. It seemed that junior brother Qin did not know that he was the one who did that. He was just angry that he did not come back as promised. Thinking like this, even his wound did not hurt as much. It should be the medicine that worked. Ha ha. Zhao Jianian laughed. If junior brother really likes that girl, when we leave 10 Extremes Mountain, we can bring her back to the southern land. She isn't a cultivator from the southern land, right? Which sect is she from? He remembered that Meng Qi seemed to be quite familiar with Xue Qingxian just now, and she was also a medical cultivator. He asked, is she a disciple of the Wind Alliance? No. Qin Xiaoma said. Junior brother, you can't be like this. It's fine if you are a bit colder in front of us, and speak less. However, in front of that girl, you have to be more proactive. Zhao Jianian said with a laugh. Later, senior brother will slowly teach you. Haha. Qin Xiaoma laughed lightly. Zhao Jianian was even happier seeing this. Even though he knew that Qin Xiaoma had gone mad after failing his tribulation, he was still very scared that he had not seen him alive or dead. He was scared that one day, this junior brother Qin would suddenly pop out of nowhere and kill him. Now seeing that Qin Xiaoma was still willing to talk to him and smile at him, even though he was not dead and had become stronger, Zhao Jianian was very displeased. However, it was better than dying under his sword. Also, since he did not know that he did it, then he could. It's about time. Before Zhao Jianian finished thinking, he suddenly heard Qin Xiaoma say, "What?" He reflexively asked. What greeted him was a sword light that was even faster and sharper than before. This time, even Wei Yuanzhong did not have time to react. Qin Xiaoma's life-bound longsword had already pierced through Zhao Jianian's neck. This sword was really too fast and too sudden. Zhao Jianian's face even carried a smile. He opened his eyes wide in disbelief. This junior brother Qin actually killed him in front of their eldest senior brother. How dare he? Zhao Jianian's throat made a gurgling sound, but he could no longer utter a complete syllable. Actually, even if he suffered such a heavy injury, he might not necessarily die. In his storage brocade pouch, there were still the life-saving medicinal pills that Master had given them before entering 10 Extremes Mountain. As long as he could. Zhao Jianian moved his fingers, but suddenly discovered that his entire body had frozen. Even his spiritual sea and spiritual energy had been frozen into ice. Forget about taking medicine from his storage brocade pouch. He could not even bend his fingers. Gurgling. His throat still made a sound, desperately trying to make a sound. Junior brother Qin Yu? Wei Yuanzhong was indescribably shocked and furious. You actually treat your own senior brother like this? Your own fellow disciple? As he spoke, he quickly took out a small porcelain bottle from his storage brocade pouch. He poured out the medicine inside, wanting to stuff it into Zhao Jianian's mouth. Ugh! Wei Yuanzhong suddenly groaned. His body went limp, and he fell to the ground. The medicinal pill in his hand rolled onto the grass, rolling to the side. Qin Xiaoma slowly walked forward, picking up that medicinal pill. He brought it to his nose and sniffed. 9 returning yang pill. Qin Xiaoma flicked his finger, throwing it to Wei Yuanzhong's side. He coldly said, "Right now even a rebirth pill can't save his life." Wei Yuanzhong only had no strength left in his body, but his mind was still clear, and he could still speak. "Why did you do this to us?" Qin Xiaoma did not speak. He only stood at the side, coldly looking at the deathly pale Zhao Jianian. "I wanted to kill him, so I killed him," he indifferently said. "So he wouldn't get in the way." Get in the way. Wei Yuanzhong stared blankly, then suddenly exploded in anger. In order to ascend 10 Extremes Mountain, you killed your own senior brother? You devil! He completely did not dare to believe it. Even if his junior brother Qin used to be rather cold and arrogant, and was also known as a genius in the main sect, he had always been alone, and had very few friends. But he always felt that this junior brother of his was not a cruel and heartless person. "Why didn't you kill me as well?" Wei Yuanzhong sternly asked. "Qin Xiaoma, as long as I don't die, I will definitely kill you to get rid of evil for the main sect." Qin Xiuma coldly glanced at him. His life-bound long sword was still suspended in the air, but it did not stab towards Wei Yuanzhong. Heh! Wei Yuanzhong coldly laughed. That medical cultivator girl, she didn't ask about our origins, didn't ask about our identities, and saved all of us in one go. When Qin Xiuma heard him mention Meng Qi, the corners of his lips almost imperceptibly rose in a gentle arc. She has always been this kind of person. How could she possibly fall for a demon like you? If she knew what you did, she would definitely. Wei Yuanzhong suddenly stopped halfway through his words. His eyes widened as he watched the woman in green slowly walk over from behind Qin Xiuma. That person was Meng Qi. Is this the person? Meng Qi had already come out of the second level. As Xue Qingxian said, it was indeed very simple. It was to test their knowledge of spiritual herbs and spiritual flowers. In the second level, there were many square lattice floors. On each floor, there was a spiritual herb or spiritual flower painted. The brushes were vivid and lifelike. With every step Meng Qi took, new questions would appear on the sky in front of her. She only needed to choose the right floor with the correct spiritual herbs and spiritual flowers according to those questions, and there would be no danger at all. Meng Qi passed through the second level unimpeded all the way. As soon as she came out, she happened to see Wei Yuanzhong fall down. She also heard the conversation between the two. Meng Qi looked at Zhao Jianian, who was stiff all over. Although the other party's expression looked a little scary, she naturally understood when she saw that he was wearing the same robe as Wei Yuanzhong. She glanced at Wei Yuanzhong and knew that Qin Xiuma didn't want to kill him. He just wanted to make him unable to move temporarily. Yes. Hearing Meng Qi's question, Qin Xiuma hesitated for a moment and nodded. Oh. Meng Qi took a few steps forward, leaned over, and gently pressed on Zhao Jianian's wrist. Fellow Taoist Meng. Seeing this, Wei Yuanzhong hurriedly said, "Please save him. You can definitely save him. He's already dead." Meng Qi stood up. Wei Yuanzhong. So fast. He was poisoned and his vitals were injured, Meng Qi said as she glanced at the 9-yang restoration pill and said, "It's useless even with the 9-yang restoration pill." She leaned over and picked up the pill, put it in a porcelain bottle, and put it on Wei Yuanzhong's body. She said, "This is a pill refined by the Wind Alliance. It's quite effective." Fellow Taoist Meng. Wei Yuanzhong finally calmed down. They had just entered the 10 Extremes mountain, and hadn't even passed the second level. They hadn't even reached the foot of the mountain, but his junior martial brother was already dead. Moreover, he died in the hands of another junior martial brother. Wei Yuanzhong only felt like crying but had no tears. He simply didn't know how to explain this to his master. He opened his mouth with difficulty, looked at Meng Qi, and then looked at Qin Xiuma. He took a deep breath and said, "My junior martial brother was killed by junior martial brother Qin. Fellow Taoist Meng, I can't repay the favor of detoxifying and saving my life. However, you shouldn't get too close to such a temperamental villain." Wei Yuanzhong gritted his teeth and said, "After all, who knows when he'll feel that you're in his way and want to kill you?" Right now he still couldn't move, and he also knew that his life was still in the hands of Qin Xiuma. However, although Meng Qi just took a mystic spirit stone from them, she did indeed save his life. Secondly, Wei Yuanzhong only felt like he was about to explode from holding it in. However, if he didn't say this, he was worried that he would suffer internal injuries and damage his Tao heart. Meng Qi nodded. "I know." She paused and said, "Previously when Qin Xiuma was transcending the tribulation, this person." Meng Qi didn't know Zhao Jianian's name. She turned her head and glanced at Qin Xiuma and asked, "What's his name?" "Zhao Jianian." This fellow Taoist Zhao Jianian didn't care about the friendship of fellow disciples. At the most dangerous moment, he stabbed him in the back. Meng Qi continued. "Ha!" Wei Yuanzhong was stunned. "The two of you cultivate sword techniques at the peak of the cloud-treading peak." Meng Qi continued. "Spells tend to belong to the water-type lineage. When transcending the tribulation, not to mention the fire poison entering the body, even if there were a few basins of charcoal around you, it would be much more dangerous." He was probably afraid that Qin Xiuma wouldn't die, so he added another palm strike after he was injured, messing up his spirit energy and making him unable to save himself. She had treated Qin Xiuma's injuries before, so she knew how serious his injuries were at that time. If it wasn't for the Cool Breeze Valley's cold pond, and Qin Xiuma's good luck, there would probably be nothing left of him now. So, isn't it right for him to kill him to take revenge? Meng Qi said. Wei Yuanzhong looked at Meng Qi in a daze. In fact, he was almost convinced. Meng Qi had just saved them, and there were many rumors about this medical cultivator in the Trichiliocosm. No one said anything bad about her. But Wei Yuanzhong opened his mouth. But this might just be his one-sided story. He didn't say anything. Meng Qi said, I was the one who treated his injuries. I saw it myself. Qin Xiuma's left hand, which was hanging by his side, clenched into a fist and then slowly relaxed. But Wei Yuanzhong opened his mouth. He felt that he should say something, but he didn't know what to say. He didn't even know who he was trying to convince. Why are you telling me this? After a long while, Wei Yuanzhong suddenly murmured. Meng Qi frowned slightly. Before she could say anything, another figure appeared at the edge of the grassland not far from her. Junior sister Meng? That person was wearing a long pink dress. Her waist was slender and her facial features were exquisite. Her long black hair was tied up and pinned up with a jade hairpin. Probably because she had been working hard recently, she looked thinner, but she looked more delicate and cute. That person was none other than Lu Qingran. Qin. After Lu Qingran called out to Meng Qi, her gaze quickly turned to Qin Xiuma. When she thought of Qin Xiuma's harsh words to her, she blushed and hurriedly looked away. Big brother Jianian. Lu Qingran suddenly saw Zhao Jianian lying dead on the ground. She screamed and stumbled over to his corpse. Big brother Jianian. She knelt beside Zhao Jianian and shook his shoulders a few times. She cried out in disbelief. Big brother Jianian, what happened to you? She seemed to have just reacted and reached out to press on Zhao Jianian's wrist. Lu Qingran's tears fell. What happened? Why did big brother Jianian die here? Big brother Jianian. She cried out in a choked voice as she turned to look at Wei Yuanzhong, who was lying at the side. Lu Qingran seemed to be a little afraid of Wei Yuanzhong. Although he was lying motionless, her body still subconsciously shrank back. Wei Yuanzhong sighed and didn't say anything. Big brother Jianian, how could he? Lu Qingran muttered. He's so powerful. How could he? YYXS. It's a long story. Wei Yuanzhong already believed Meng Qi. Actually, the main reason was that Qin Xiuma didn't kill him. If he really wanted to kill his fellow sect members because of Shiju Mountain, then even if he didn't kill him, he could have seriously injured him. But now, Wei Yuanzhong could clearly feel that the spiritual energy in his body wasn't stagnant at all. He reckoned that he would be able to move after a while. But, Lu Qingran's tears rolled down her pretty face. Big brother Jianian is such a good person. Why would someone kill him? Why would there be such a cruel person? With a face full of disbelief, she suddenly turned to look at Meng Qi and Qin Xiuma. Who killed big brother Jianian? Lu Qingran asked. Meng Qi. She was actually quite convinced. Not long ago, when she met her, wasn't she still in the restaurant with Wei Yuanzhong? Now she kept calling him big brother Jianian. This Zhao Jianian, he had a Dao companion, right? Meng Qi remembered. She even went to treat his pregnant wife who was poisoned, and was about to give birth. Then, she was unlucky enough to meet Qin Xiuma, who came to take revenge. Meng Qi remembered that Madame Zhao told her that she and Zhao Jianian were childhood sweethearts who cultivated together, and were very close to each other. She even remembered the light on Madame Zhao's face when she said that. She was poisoned and pregnant, so her skin was dark and a little scary. But as long as Zhao Jianian was mentioned, her eyes would really light up. Her expression was also gentle and happy. As a bystander, Meng Qi could feel her sweetness. So she also had a deep impression of him. Seeing that Meng Qi and Qin Xiuma were ignoring her, Lu Qingran slowly stood up and used her sleeve to wipe her tears. But her eyelashes were still wet. Just now she cried, so her eyes were also red. Even the tip of her nose was red. In addition, Lu Qingran was originally very beautiful. Because of this, she looked even more like a pear blossom with tears, making people feel pity for her. At this time, there were already some cultivators who passed the second round and returned to the grassland. They all saw the situation here and subconsciously came over to surround them. Did you kill Big Brother Jianian? Lu Qingran asked. As she spoke, she opened her hand, and a medicine knife appeared in her hand. Fellow Taoist Lu Wei Yuanzhong was still lying down and couldn't move, so he hurriedly dissuaded her. This matter is very complicated, don't be rash. He also saw the cultivators who surrounded them. Dirty linen shouldn't be aired in public. He couldn't talk about his shitty scandal in front of these people, even if they didn't remember anything after leaving Shijua Mountain. Wei Yuanzhong couldn't say it. I want to avenge Big Brother Jianian. Lu Qingran stubbornly said. He can't die so innocently. Wei Yuanzhong. It's you? Right. Lu Qingran gritted her teeth and looked at Meng Qi hatefully. Why? Junior Marshal Sister Meng, why did you kill him? Did you? Speaking up to hear, she suddenly choked with sobs. Do you want to snatch away all the people who are good to me? If you can't snatch them away, you'll have to kill them before you're satisfied. Meng Qi. I killed him. Qin Xiaoma stepped forward and said coldly. Do you want to take revenge? With a flick of his finger, his life-bound longsword instantly appeared beside him. The tip of the sword was cold. Seeing this, Lu Qingran shrank back in fear. She quickly stood up again and said loudly, even if you kill me, I still want to ask, why did you kill Big Brother Jianian? Isn't he your senior martial brother? What did he do that you could kill a fellow disciple like this? Qin Xiaoma coldly looked at Lu Qingran and didn't explain. But under his gaze, Lu Qingran couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Meng Qi. Fellow Taoist Lu, I'm sure you still remember where we met Qin Xiaoma that day. Lu Qingran was stunned and slowly nodded. It was all thanks to him that he ended up like that. Meng Qi raised her chin towards the area behind her and said. Lu Qingran's eyes widened. She opened her mouth and murmured, but she was stunned for a while before she continued. Fellow Taoist Qin didn't die, right? Lu Qingran hurriedly said. Also, he was injured during the tribulation. His injuries were so serious because he failed the tribulation and went mad. Meng Qi. So that day at the cold pond in the back mountain, Lu Qingran clearly took care of Qin Xiaoma. She was also a medical cultivator, so why didn't she check on his injuries? Even if he really was careless and did something wrong, fellow Taoist Qin didn't die. He was punished by their master later and had to face the wall to reflect on his mistakes for 8 months. You shouldn't have killed him. When Lu Qingran said this, she was about to cry again. Tears hung on her long eyelashes and could fall down at any time. Lu Qingran turned her head and looked around. Seeing that many cultivators had already gathered around, she felt even more confident. Junior Marshal Sister Meng, I know you don't like me, she said softly. Meng Qi. I indeed don't like you, but I won't kill you just because I don't like you. Lu Qingran's eyes were brimming with tears. Even if you've already betrayed the sect and are no longer a disciple of my Cool Breeze Valley, you should still remember that when you first entered the sect, Master earnestly taught you that you couldn't leave someone in the lurch. How could you just watch Elder Brother Jianian die? If you were willing to save him, you could have saved him. Lu Qingran choked with sobs. Even if you don't like him, you're a medical cultivator. Have you really completely forgotten Master's words? Meng Qi frowned slightly. She was a bit irritable. Lu Qingran was so annoyed. How could there be so many male cultivators who were willing to live or die for her? They were even willing to fight until their heads bled for her. She couldn't help but glance at Qin Xiaoma. The black-robed man in front of her used to be one of them. Lu Qingran. Meng Qi said coldly. Let me say it, Qin Xiaoma said. He looked around and said loudly, I'm Qin Xiaoma of the Cloud Summit. He was my senior martial brother. I was the one who killed him. It had nothing to do with anyone else. Qin Xiaoma paused. He glanced coldly at Lu Qingran. Although he'd gotten his revenge, he didn't want to talk about the past, nor did he want to talk about it in public. He didn't need other people's sympathy, nor did he need other people's recognition. He'd just kill those who deserved to die. Qin Xiaoma's gaze scared Lu Qingran so much that she took a step back. He then continued. The reason I killed him was because this senior martial brother, who used to be my close friend, stabbed me in the back with a poison dagger when I was about to advance to the nascent soul realm and transcend my tribulation. He even hit me with his palm. Not only did I fail to transcend my tribulation, but I also suffered a chi deviation and almost died. Fortunately, when Qin Xiaoma said this, his tone became gentler. Fortunately, I met fellow Taoist Meng Qi and managed to keep my life. Therefore, I killed him for revenge. Even if I didn't meet him today, I would have gone to the southern land and taken his worthless life. He looked coldly at Lu Qingran. I shouldn't have killed him. Lu Qingran shrank back again. Tears welled up in her eyes. She then said, I don't believe it. Brother Jianian is a chivalrous and righteous person. Many people in the three realms know about his chivalrous life. This is just because you. She looked at Meng Qi and said loudly, I won't believe your one-sided story. Ask everyone, does anyone believe you? I believe you. Meng Qi said, Lu Qingran, you were also there that day. How could an ordinary person who suffered a chi deviation after failing a tribulation be injured like that? She paused, then said, You said that I don't remember what Master taught me. Then Master is a medical cultivator, and you're also a medical cultivator. Master taught you medical skills, and told you not to leave someone in the lurch. That day, when I went to the bottom of the lake to pick medicinal herbs, didn't you treat Qin Xiaoma? You didn't use your medical skills to treat people, but instead pestered me endlessly. You're completely letting your emotions get the better of you. Did you forget who she taught you? Lu Qingran bit her lower lip. A cold light suddenly flashed through the depths of her eyes. This again. She didn't want it to be like this. Her eyes were still filled with tears. She said loudly, Apart from you, is there anyone else who would believe it? Brother Jianian entered the sect earlier than Qin Xiaoma, and his cultivation level is higher than his. He's also his senior martial brother, and they're close friends. Why would he harm him? Tribulation transcendence is extremely dangerous. Maybe Qin Xiaoma was hallucinating at that time. Lu Qingran took a deep breath. She didn't want it to be like this. She was clearly the one who was popular, had more talent, and was doted on by Master the moment she entered the sect. She looked around and asked loudly, Fellow Taoists, do you believe it? They clearly found an excuse to kill Brother Jianian for the sake of Shijua Mountain. Do you really believe the words of someone who can casually kill his senior martial brother? Do you believe the words of a medical cultivator who leaves someone in the lurch? After Lu Qingran finished speaking, she coldly glared at Meng Qi. She didn't believe that there would be anyone standing on her side at this time. When strangers saw her and Meng Qi for the first time, they were all willing to believe her. I believe it. Suddenly an unfamiliar cultivator said, Fellow Taoist, you weren't here just now, were you? That person looked at Lu Qingran with a teasing smile on his face. Lu Qingran was startled. I also believe it. A cultivator standing next to that person also said. We believe it. Another person said. That's right, we believe in fellow Taoist Meng. Another person also said. At this time, there were more and more cultivators who passed the second test. Although many cultivators who came out later didn't hear the conversation just now, they quickly heard the entire matter from their fellow disciples. Soon even more people said loudly, we believe it. We believe whatever fellow Taoist Meng says. That's right, we believe in fellow Taoist Meng. Someone saw Lu Qingran's beauty and her eyes were filled with tears. His tone was still gentle. It's not good for me to say too much about the internal affairs of Cloud Crushing Peak. However, I'm afraid you're mistaken about fellow Taoist Meng leaving someone in the lurch? You weren't here just now, right? There were also cultivators who were more straightforward. If fellow Taoist Meng really did it for Shijua Mountain, she only needed to stand aside and watch. Most of us would have died by now. That person sneered and said, If we're talking about threats, all of us added together are still bigger than a dead Zhao Jianian, right? However, she didn't even think about it and still cured our poison. Lu Qingran was completely confused. In the end, what in the world happened? Why did Meng Qi suddenly have such charisma? At this time another person said, I actually don't think I'm a good person. Fellow Taoist Meng still saved me without asking anything. She didn't leave me in the lurch. From this, it can be seen that fellow Taoist Meng isn't someone who leaves someone in the lurch. I even feel that she's too kind. Maybe some people aren't worth her saving. That person paused, then continued. So if there really comes a day when she doesn't save someone, then I can only believe that that person deserves to die. Then, if that person doesn't die, I'm also willing to use my meager strength to kill that person. The person who spoke swept his cold gaze towards Lu Qingran. He was a sword cultivator. His life-bound longsword was hanging by his side. Compared to Qin Xiuma's longsword, that sword was narrower and sharper. He was clearly talking about another person, but his gaze seemed to be telling Lu Qingran, "Be careful, or else the longsword doesn't have eyes." Lu Qingran was completely stunned. Why did it turn out like this? What in the world happened just now? Were these people crazy? Mengqi, 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 Mengqi. Lu Qingran took a deep breath. Tears streamed down her face. She choked with sobs. I'll definitely avenge Brother Jianian. Just as she finished speaking, a chilling aura suddenly appeared on both sides of her neck, and 4 long swords suddenly appeared. Chapter 155. Lu Qingran was completely stunned. Long swords, for long swords flashing with cold light, were at the side of her neck. The sword energy stimulated her skin and caused small goosebumps to appear on her delicate skin. She had never been treated like this before. This was not over yet. Lu Qingran felt the soles of her feet suddenly heat up. A circle of fire suddenly rose from the ground and trapped her in the center. The fire burned coldly. A gust of wind blew. Other than the swaying flames, Lu Qingran heard a buzzing sound above her head. She raised her head in a daze and saw a swarm of tiny, light green bugs flying and circling above her head. What was happening? Lu Qingran dazedly looked at the long swords at her neck. The long swords, spears, and flying little black insects did not move, but she could feel the pressure coming from them. These people who had attacked without hesitation were serious and not joking with her. Lu Qingran suddenly understood this. Her body started to tremble uncontrollably. Her tears fell quickly. Those tears slid down her smooth face and wet her clothes. A pear blossom with tears was the most heartbreaking. But those people who use swords, flames, and poisonous insects to trap Lu Qingran did not seem to have any pity. They looked coldly at Lu Qingran. Their gazes sharper than the weapons and spells. Lu Qingran struggled to swallow, and her gaze slowly landed on Mengqi's face. The blue-robed Xiuzha stood there silently. Other than frowning a few times, his expression did not change at all. Lu Qingran suddenly felt that while Mengqi was looking at her, she did not enter her eyes. She had long lost her in her eyes. What is this? At this time another voice sounded. The youth in red walked over as he looked curiously at the corpse on the ground, and Lu Qingran, who was trapped in a pile of long swords and spells. Fanchuan Tanshu. Come, I killed Zhao Jianian. Qin Xiuma said that one of the 4 swords belonged to him. She didn't listen to any explanation. She believed that Meng Qi was the murderer and was ready to take revenge. Oh, the scarlet-clothed youth, Chu Tianfeng, replied indifferently before turning around abruptly. The 5 fingers of his right hand suddenly spread open. Lu Qingran suddenly screamed. Ah! A small flame had already ignited at the tip of her hair. She frantically extinguished the small flame with all her might, not even caring about the cold aura emanating from her sword. Chu Tianfeng sneered and said lazily, Lu Qingran, you can't put out that fire. What can you do with your current strength? Lu Qingran's face instantly turned deathly pale. She didn't say anything. She just desperately tried to extinguish the flames in her hair. Soon, she realized that it was just as Chu Tianfeng had said. She couldn't extinguish the flames. But fortunately, the flames didn't really burn her hair. It just looked a little scary at first. Lu Qingran slowly calmed down, and slowly raised her head to look at Chu Tianfeng. The proud young man had a handsome face. Just a year ago, he still cared for her in every way possible. But now his face was cold. Even the gaze he looked at her with was icy, without a trace of tenderness. Chu Tianfeng was right about one thing. Right now she really couldn't do anything. Let's go. Meng Qi turned around and didn't look at Lu Qingran anymore. Junior sister Meng. Lu Qingran suddenly called out to her loudly. Meng Qi stopped in her tracks and turned around to look at her quietly. Right now, she didn't have any feelings for Lu Qingran at all. In fact, to be honest, even in her previous life, she didn't have any feelings for this very popular senior sister of hers. She was just prepared to stay away from her when she met her again, so as to avoid being so unlucky again. Whether it was love or hate, Meng Qi's emotions had nothing to do with Lu Qingran at all. I will also become strong, Lu Qingran said slowly, word by word. Oh. Meng Qi nodded casually and turned to continue walking forward. Lu Qingran. Ha 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 ha. Chu Tianfeng laughed heartily and extinguished the fire in Lu Qingran's hair. He turned and left with Meng Qi. Even if the Xiuzha who were watching the show acted against Lu Qingran, they wouldn't really take her life after seeing that she had said some harsh words. At this time, everyone shook their heads and turned to go to their next checkpoint. Soon, only Lu Qingran, Wei Yuanzhong who was still lying on the ground, and Zhao Jianyan's corpse were left on the grassland. There was still a long sword hanging motionlessly next to Lu Qingran's neck. Qin Xiaoma still stood in place and looked at her silently. Are you going to kill me? Lu Qingran asked. She looked at Qin Xiaoma fearlessly. The hands hanging at her sides slowly clenched, her back straight, stubbornness written all over her pretty little face. Yes. Qin Xiaoma's tone was calm. Haha. Lu Qingran laughed coldly. Her face was full of tear stains, her long eyelashes were wet, and her palm-sized face was full of stubbornness. Even Wei Yuanzhong who was lying on the side couldn't bear it and said, Qin Shitty, she's just saying it. Qin Xiaoma ignored Wei Yuanzhong. He knew more than Wei Yuanzhong. In the future, Lu Qingran would have a very strong backer. Calculating the time she would meet that person, it would be around the time they left the 10 Extremes mountain. At that time, if she really wanted to take revenge on Meng Qi, even if they could leave the 10 Extremes mountain, they probably wouldn't be that person's match. If you want to kill me, then do it. Lu Qingran's back was still ramrod straight, and she looked at Qin Xiaoma proudly. You can kill Brother Jianian, so you naturally won't hesitate to kill me. Qin Xiaoma's right hand's index and middle fingers came together, and his life-bound sword hummed softly as it stabbed towards Lu Qingran. Qin Shitty. Wei Yuanzhong anxiously shouted. Are you crazy? His body still couldn't move, and he comically bounced on the ground like a fish. Qin Xiaoma's sword was famous for its speed, and his sword was already very close to Lu Qingran. His fingers had just moved, and that cold sword intent had already brushed past the other party's neck. No matter how proud Lu Qingran was, her beautiful face turned pale. She was so shocked that she couldn't speak, and her body subconsciously shrank back. He wasn't joking. He really wanted to kill her. The killing intent on Qin Xiaoma's sword was really too dense, and it couldn't be concealed at all. Lu Qingran gritted her teeth. She was clearly telling herself to run, but her legs seemed to be filled with lead, and she couldn't move at all. Was she really going to die? Was she going to die here? She didn't want to die. She still didn't want to die. Lu Qingran could even feel that the sharp edge of Qin Xiaoma's sword was already touching her skin. In just a moment, she would be a corpse lying on the ground like Zhao Jianian. In that split second, Qin Xiaoma's life-bound sword seemed to be lightly flicked by an invisible finger. The sword froze at Lu Qingran's neck. It clearly only needed a little more force to kill her, but it was difficult to move forward. Another light zhung sound. The life-bound sword was once again lightly flicked by someone. That sword was connected to his mind. Qin Xiaoma's entire body shook. In an instant, he couldn't stand steadily, and his tall body flew backwards. With a bang, he was thrown heavily onto the grass. This change was extremely sudden. Qin Xiaoma wasn't that far from the perfect spirit-severing stage. Those who could enter 10 Extremes Mountain were at most insightful emptiness cultivators. Even if they were insightful emptiness cultivators, they wouldn't go so far as to casually fling his life-bound sword and throw him out. Right now he didn't even know who the other party was, and where they were. Qin Xiaoma lay on the ground, unable to move for a long time. He took a deep breath. The life-bound sword that was frozen in the air finally flew back to his side. Who was it? Who was helping Lu Qingran? Qin Xiaoma propped himself up on the ground with both hands, trying to stand up. Lu Qingran also opened her eyes wide. Her eyes were filled with bewilderment. She looked around blankly, as if she didn't know what was going on either. She can't die. A gentle voice suddenly sounded beside Qin Xiaoma's ear. That voice seemed to be very close, as if it was directly whispering softly into his ear. But it also seemed to be very far away from him, as if it came from the misty sky. He couldn't tell whether the owner of the voice was male or female. He only felt that the voice was very pleasant to hear, filled with an indescribable feeling. It was just a few simple words, and it wasn't an order to Qin Xiaoma. Yet, a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. He shouldn't want to kill Lu Qingran. Don't you also like her very much? That voice seemed to laugh, and then said, You should like her. Right now you hate her. Isn't it because she doesn't like you? That's right, he liked her very much. Do you still remember the first time you saw her? That voice said softly. Do you still remember the first time you saw her when you opened your eyes? At that time, didn't you already like her, and were deeply attracted to her? That seems to be the case. Qin Xiaoma only felt his head become more and more dizzy, and only that voice whispered in his ear. So how can you kill her? You love her. He opened his mouth and muttered repeatedly. I am. Yes, that's it. Don't lie to yourself anymore. You love her. You can live for her, and you can die for her. That voice said softly. I can for her. Qin Xiaoma raised his head. He saw Lu Qingran running towards him, her beautiful eyes full of worry. She was worried about him? You see, just now you wanted to kill her, but she's still worried about you. Isn't she the kindest girl in the world? The girl who is most worthy of your love? That voice continued to persuade him patiently. Yes. Qin Xiaoma muttered in response. He faintly felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what. Lu Qingran had already run to his side. She leaned over to support him. Are you okay? Qin Xiaoma turned his hand and grasped Lu Qingran's hand that was supporting his arm. Her soft fingers were a bit cold in his palm. He raised his head slowly, somewhat stiffly. They were so close now that he could clearly see the tear stains on Lu Qingran's face. He saw her long wet eyelashes, which were gently trembling like butterfly wings in the cold wind. Qin Xiaoma, are you okay? Lu Qingran asked him, her tone full of concern. You see, she's so worried about you. She's so sincerely worried about you. She's a truly kind-hearted girl. She won't ask you to pay spirit stones. Ah. That gentle voice suddenly rose. The voice that was as pleasant as the spring breeze was now filled with unspeakable anger. Damn it! In the distant blue sky, there seemed to be a bloody red light exploding. Even the horizon was dyed blood red. Qin Xiaoma's muddled mind seemed to have been struck by lightning. He instantly woke up. It's him again! That voice said hatefully through gritted teeth. Who was it? Qin Xiaoma brushed aside Lu Qingran's hand. His strength had recovered and he slowly stood up. In 10 Extreme Mountain, there was a xiuzhe that could make this person so strong that she could completely crush him. Wary? He heard that voice snort coldly. A wave of coldness suddenly attacked him from all directions. At the same time, only a tenth of Meng Qi's third pass had passed. Her third pass was also related to medicine. There was a flat path that led straight ahead. There were countless little houses on the side of the path. Every 5 steps Meng Qi took, she would reach the door of the next little house. Pushing open the door and entering, there would be an injured or sick person waiting for her in the room. That path was not hard to walk and was not long. Meng Qi stood at the entrance and could see the exit. However, it took her a lot of time to treat the patients in the little houses one by one. Meng Qi was in the 9th little house right now. She had a silver needle in her hand. In the Dan cauldron next to her, medicinal liquid boiled and gave off waves of bitter medicinal smell. At this time, a wave of coldness suddenly attacked her. Ugh! Meng Qi gave a muffled grunt. Her life-bond Dan cauldron was the 5-ling cauldron. The fire burning in the cauldron was the leaf fire formation she had carved on the Dan cauldron. But now, the 5-ling cauldron had frozen into ice, and the leaf fire was instantly extinguished. Such a strong coldness. Meng Qi instinctively looked up at the sky. These little houses did not have roofs. She could clearly see the gray sky. In the distant horizon, the bloody light suddenly brightened again. This time, it almost lit up half the sky. Mengqi's heart started to beat quickly. She had never been so panicked before and immediately stood up. What was going on? Mengqi stared blankly. Her heart was beating faster and faster. She could not help but raise her hand and touch her chest. Although she did not know what had happened, why was she suddenly worried? In the room, the patient who was waiting for her treatment was still in the same position. It seemed that as long as Mengqi did not continue, his injury would not worsen. At this moment, the red light in the sky flashed again. This time it was different from before. Mengqi looked up at the sky in a daze. The red light had faded and the sky had turned blue again. But now, there were 7 stars shining in the sky. The Big Dipper. Mengqi looked at the 7 stars that were arranged in the shape of a spoon. The stars were incomparably bright, and could be seen clearly even during the day. Was it Qingyan's Hinjun? This thought suddenly flashed through her mind. Was it him? So her heart was beating so fast just now. Was that sudden worry and anxiety also because of Yin Qingyan? Did something happen to him? At this moment, another red light flashed in the sky. This time the ground shook. Even Mengqi was the same. She staggered and almost lost her balance. A voice suddenly sounded in her mind. Mengqi, was this Yin Qingyan's voice? Mengqi was a little uncertain. The voice was too soft and disappeared too quickly. It was just a flash. Mengqi. Not long after, the voice suddenly sounded again. Chapter 156. Was it calling her? Who was it? She thought about it carefully. That voice sounded a little unfamiliar. It was ethereal and not real at all. And it seemed to be very far away from her. Mengqi was a little uncertain. She didn't know if she was hallucinating or not. The sky had returned to normal. The blue sky was clean, and there were only a few white clouds on the horizon. The flames and stars just now had completely disappeared. Mengqi raised her hand and touched her chest. Her heart was still beating very fast, as if it was going to jump out of her chest. What was going on? She narrowed her eyes and looked at her spread open fingers. While the 5-spirit cauldron was still refining medicine, she withdrew her divine sense and quickly scanned her spiritual sea and body. The inner core was floating in the air above her spiritual sea. Threads of spiritual energy slowly fell and finally merged into her spiritual sea. The bamboo slip that Lin Yan gave her stayed quietly beside the inner core. A few threads of spiritual energy were separated from the inner core and wrapped around the bamboo slip. Everything was normal, except for her unusually fast heartbeat. Mengqi took a deep breath and tried to calm herself down. The 5-spirit cauldron's medicinal herbs were fragrant. The few spiritual herbs finally turned into a small pill. She calmly fed the pill to the person in the room and quickly finished the rest. Then, she raised her hand and took back her 5-spirit cauldron. Ugh! Mengqi suddenly groaned. As soon as the 5-spirit cauldron returned to her spiritual sea, it suddenly spun quickly and kept making bang-bang sounds. It was as if something in the 5-spirit cauldron was beating it. What was going on? Mengqi glanced at her 5-spirit cauldron in confusion. It was empty. There was nothing in it. She frowned. Was this also one of the tests of the 10 Extremes mountain? Mengqi waved her hand and called out the 5-spirit cauldron again. The palm-sized cauldron spun in the air and finally quieted down. The bang-bang sounds were also gone. So what was the meaning of this? Did her natal pill cauldron not want to stay in her spiritual sea anymore? Mengqi frowned even more. Just as she was about to go forward and check her natal pill cauldron, she suddenly stopped. Ah! Mengqi could not help but exclaim in his heart as his eyes widened. She was shocked to see that a small claw had suddenly emerged from her 5-spirits cauldron, which was supposed to be empty. Mengqi. Its small white paws were furry and probably smaller than Mengqi's palm. Her little paw gently rested on the edge of her 5-spirit cauldron. Not long after, she stretched out another paw and rested it on the edge of the cauldron. Mengqi held his breath. After the little claws came out, 2 semicircular little ears popped out of the 5-spirits cauldron. The ears were still fluffy and swayed back and forth gently. Mengqi. She swallowed her saliva with some difficulty. Wasn't this? The ears in the five spirits cauldron continued to rise slowly, followed by the same fluffy little head. Then, it was her gem-like eyes that were even more beautiful than the sky. Meng-Chi was about to suffocate. It was little Chi. No. This was Yin Qingyan's primordial spirit. That little white tiger looked exactly the same as Yin Qingyan's little white tiger that Meng-Chi had seen in the beginning. It was just that those azure blue eyes were even clearer. It lay obediently on the edge of the cauldron and stared at Meng-Chi for a moment. Its little head suddenly tilted slightly, and with a howl, it suddenly jumped up and pounced on her. Meng-Chi hurriedly reached out to catch it. A primordial spirit actually did not have a physical body and was weightless. She instinctively stretched out her arms and hugged the little white tiger in her arms. Howl, howl. The little white tiger softly whimpered and found a comfortable position in her arms. It lay down as zoo. Orgit stopped moving. When Meng-Chi looked down, the little white tiger had already closed its eyes and placed one paw on her arm. It looked like it was ready to have a good sleep. Actually, it was not a big deal to hug it. A primordial spirit was completely weightless. To Meng-Chi, it was like carrying her own personal Dharma treasure. But why did the little white tiger suddenly appear here? Meng-Chi did not know what to call this little fellow. Calling it little Chi was definitely out of the question. This was Yin Qingyan's primordial spirit, not the injured little white tiger. She knew that the primordial spirits of demon cultivators were like this. They would never grow up and would ultimately be different from the original body. Calling it Qingyan's Henjun obviously would not work either. Meng-Chi looked at the little white tiger's fluffy body, small ears, and small head. She could not help but purse her lips. She really wanted to touch it. Just once. Meng-Chi reached out to rub the little white tiger's head. Although it did not have any physical weight, it still felt good to the touch. It did not shrink at all. Nice touch. Meng-Chi could not help but rub the little white tiger's head again, and then pinch its ears. Her slender fingers gently scratched the chin of the primordial spirit. She watched as the other party lifted its head in satisfaction. It did not even open its eyes as it purred. "Why are you here?" Meng-Chi asked gently. The little white tiger's primordial spirit purred as if it did not hear her at all. "I know." Meng-Chi snapped out of her daze. She and Yin Qingyan were Tao companions now, so it did not seem inexplicable that the other party's primordial spirit appeared in her cauldron. Was that so? Meng-Chi was instantly energized. Was there such a good thing in becoming Tao companions with a demon cultivator? She could actually share the other party's primordial spirit. Is that so? Meng-Chi lowered her head and stroked the little white tiger's primordial spirit. She was in a great mood. "Are you here because Qingyan's Henjun and I are Tao companions?" The little white tiger's primordial spirit continued to purr as a reply. It was so lazy that it couldn't even be bothered to open its eyes. However, a vague thought flashed across Meng-Chi's mind. She lowered her head and looked at the little white tiger's primordial spirit in her arms. Its fluffy body rose and fell slowly with the other party's breathing. Meng-Chi recalled the vague thought that flashed across her mind just now. Was it the primordial spirits? So not only could she share the primordial spirit of a demon cultivator, but she could also slowly communicate with the other party's thoughts like her own natal Dharma treasure? Was it so easy? What exactly happened just now? The sudden appearance of the little white tiger's primordial spirit made Meng-Chi certain that something must have happened. The little white tiger's primordial spirit turned over, revealing its fluffy little tummy toward her, and even yawned. Meng-Chi reached out to rub its tummy. The little white tiger even narrowed its eyes in satisfaction. In any case, it looked like it was not worried at all. She was a little amused and pinched the little white tiger's semicircular little ears. The other party had clearly completely treated her as one of its own. It obediently lay down and let her pinch it, even taking the opportunity to rub against her gently. Meng-Chi softened her voice. "Is your master all right?" The little white tiger purred as it rubbed its little head against Meng-Chi's palm, looking very innocent. Meng-Chi felt that it was both cute and a little amusing. To be honest, whether it was the little Chi of the past or this adorable and silly little white tiger's primordial spirit, it was very difficult for her to associate it with Yin Qingyan. Qing Yan's Henjun was supposed to be an outstanding and aloof almighty being. In the end, her primordial spirit was even more adorable than the little red fox from Xikongxing. Was it okay? Meng Qi pursed her lips and rubbed the little white tiger's primordial spirit again. She suddenly realized that her heart, which had been beating very fast just now, had now slowed down. The indescribable worry and anxiety that had filled her chest for no reason seemed to have disappeared. Was it because of it? She scratched the little white tiger's chin. Sure enough, the other party raised its little head and purred nonstop. Meng Qi waved her hand, and the 5-spirit cauldron flew to her side. It leaned over and gently rubbed the little white tiger's primordial spirit. I'm going to continue moving forward, she said gently. Can you go back into the cauldron? She had not passed this stage yet. Since it seemed that Yin Qingyan was fine, she had to continue. The little white tiger's primordial spirit purred and jumped into the 5-spirit cauldron. The little white tiger's primordial spirit was still sitting obediently in the belly of the cauldron, only revealing a little bit of its furry ears. She could not help but smile. The little white tiger's primordial spirit seemed to sense something. It suddenly opened its eyes and looked around curiously for a moment. However, what puzzled Meng Qi was that, logically speaking, she had been treating patients and saving people in the 3rd test, so her medical skills should have improved. Now it seemed that this test was for her to complete the test, and there was no reward in the process. Meng Qi did not think about it anymore. She gathered her thoughts and walked to the next room. This was already the 3rd room from the end of the 3rd test. Like every room before her, there was a person lying on the bed inside. Meng Qi walked into the room and heard the person moaning in pain. Ugh! The room was filled with the smell of blood. It was not just the smell of blood. It seemed to be mixed with rotten food and the smell of mud, making the smell of blood especially pungent. The person lying on the bed was a middle-aged man. When he heard the sound of footsteps, he turned his head with difficulty to look at Meng Qi. Save me. He looked to be in his 50s or 60s, but his skin was pale. His face was bloodless, and even his lips were grayish-white. His nose was gently moving, and his white hair was messy like withered grass. Meng Qi walked to the side of the bed. The smell of blood was much stronger than before. She could see clearly now that the middle-aged man was very, very thin. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was all skin and bones. His entire face seemed to be covered with a layer of skin directly on his bones, and his skin looked dull. There were only a few sparse eyebrows left, and his eyes were lifeless. However, his eyes could still move with Meng Qi. They still fell on her face, and his protruding Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Even from so far away, she could hear the sound of phlegm in his throat. Save me. The man moaned with difficulty. His fingers lifted up a little from the bed, and fell down weakly again. This was a very weak person, but he still had a trace of consciousness. Meng Qi put her right hand together, and a blue light flashed. She gently pressed it between the man's eyebrows. The man's skin was very cold and without elasticity. If he could not speak, she would feel no different from a dead person. The middle-aged man took deep breaths. Every breath seemed to be with all his strength. In addition, he was very thin now, so she could clearly see his chest rising and falling vigorously with every breath he took. There were no external injuries. Meng Qi quickly did a simple examination for the middle-aged man. The smell of blood did not come from his wounds. She took out silver needles from her storage brocade pouch. This was also a talisman that medical Xiao liked. Some medical Xiao, such as Xue Qingxian, even chose silver needles as their soul-tethered talisman. Meng Qi's silver needles were not as handy as Xue Qingxuan's soul-tethered talisman, but she had used them for a long time. She flicked the silver needles into the man's meridian point, and formed a spell with her fingers. The silver needles quickly followed the man's meridian point, and entered his body. A normal Lianqi Xiuzha, who had no external injuries or internal injuries, was now skin and bones. It had to be known that as long as one stepped onto the path of Xiuzha, even if they did not have enough talent, and could only be Lianqi or Zhuji, they would still be stronger than normal people. Normal minor illnesses were far away from them. To be this weak, it was usually due to injuries. The Lingxi was very small, but it was normal. There was not much Ling energy in the Ling Sea, but it was the size and quantity of a normal lianqi xiuzha. The silver needles had already returned to Meng Qi's hands. She lowered her head and grasped the middle-aged man's wrist. The wrist was very thin, and she could feel the pulse. The pulse was slightly weak, but it was not too big of a problem. Meng Qi took out her natural silk gloves and put them on. She reached out and rolled up the man's sleeves. The arm was as thin as firewood, the skin loose and cold. She hesitated and then reached out to undo the other's clothes. On the chest, the ribs were clearly defined. Other than being thin and weak, there really was no other problem. Meng Qi became alert. This lianqi xiuzha middle-aged male xiu was so thin, he clearly was sick or injured. However, even with her current medical skills and cultivation, she couldn't find any clues at all. This 10 Extremes mountain was a bit interesting. Meng Qi thought and then raised her hand to call out the 5-spirit cauldron. Snow ginseng, pale white spell, blood essence grass. She said the names of 7 or 8 Ling medicines in one breath. With a series of rustling sounds, those Ling medicines fell into her 5-spirit cauldron. The little white tiger's primordial spirit naturally came out as well. It was looking at Meng Qi with a pair of sleepy big eyes. It looked at Meng Qi and then lowered its head to sniff the 5-spirit cauldron that it was already very used to. The smell of medicine hit its face, and it could not help but raise its paw to rub its little nose. Meng Qi flicked out a 9th-grade spirit stone, and flames suddenly rose under the 5-spirit cauldron. The Ling medicines in the cauldron quickly melted into a ball, turning into a small bowl of light brown liquid. She put the liquid into a small bowl, helped the middle-aged man sit up, and brought the small bowl to his mouth. The man still had a trace of clarity in his mind, and he consciously gulped down the bowl of medicine. After all, this was only a test of the 10 Extremes mountain. The Ling medicines provided were all extremely effective. Not long after he drank the medicine, his spirit shook and he slowly exhaled. "Thank you, fellow Taoist," the middle-aged male xiu said softly. "If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid I would have died here." "What happened?" Meng Qi asked. Medical cultivators' silver needles and spells were not omnipotent. Many times, only by knowing what the patient had experienced before could they find the cause of their injury or illness. Meng Qi took the small bowl and put it aside. She stood by the bed and looked at the middle-aged male xiu asking, "How long have you been like this?" "Almost 3 months." The man smiled bitterly. His voice was still weak, but it was a lot more energetic than before. At least he could speak completely. 3 months ago, I went hunting in the mountains. I wanted to find some rare birds and strange beasts to exchange for some spirit stones and a new spell. If I could enter the foundation building realm in my lifetime, I could extend my life by 10 years. Half of my life's cultivation was not in vain. The middle-aged male xiu spoke politely. "There's a forest 100 miles away from my home city. Usually, strange beasts would occasionally appear, but I'm not afraid of being laughed at by fellow Taoists. I can still deal with them." Who knew that I went to the forest that day and walked inside for a full hour, but I didn't even see a single living thing. I knew that something must have happened there that we didn't know about, so I quickly retreated and wanted to go back and tell the sect protecting the city. Meng Qi nodded. Who knew that before I could take a few steps, I felt a sharp pain in the back of my neck. Then 7 or 8 sword xiu wearing black clothes suddenly appeared. 7 or 8 of them attacked me, and I was just a small qi refining cultivator. In the blink of an eye, several long swords stabbed me. Everything went black in front of my eyes, and I felt pain all over my body. Soon I fainted. Meng Qi nodded. In fact, she had already examined him. Whether it was the back of his neck or his body, there were no traces of external injuries. The middle-aged male xiu was just a qi refining cultivator. Even if he received the best treatment after being injured, even if it had been a year, with Meng Qi's current medical skills, she could still find out that he had been injured. However, she didn't say anything. She just listened to the middle-aged male xiu continue speaking. When I woke up, I was already back home. The sect responsible for protecting our city had invited a medical cultivator and had already cured my external injuries. His medical skills were excellent. When I woke up, I had already been unconscious for 5 days and 5 nights. The traces of external injuries on my body had already disappeared. At this point he gasped for breath, his cheeks slightly red. He glanced at Meng Qi and said, "That medical cultivator was about 40 years old." He was already a medical cultivator at the peak of the fourth realm. He looked about 30 years old. He paused again before continuing. But he also couldn't see anything wrong with me other than my external injuries. I was getting weaker day by day. Not only could I no longer cultivate, but I also became like this, neither human nor ghost, struggling at death's door. Meng Qi nodded and paced back and forth in the room twice. Just by listening to this middle-aged male Xiu's narration, his mind was obviously clear, and his words were very organized. It didn't seem like he was deliberately lying. Moreover, he had no need to lie to her, unless he didn't want to live anymore. But he really wasn't injured. Meng Qi was sure that if the other party was really injured so badly by a long sword as he said, and it was a sword Xiu who attacked him, she couldn't not have noticed it. So Meng Qi raised her head slightly, and paced back and forth in the room twice. Then there were only two possibilities for this situation. The man was lying, or he was hallucinating at that time. What happened in the hallucination was so realistic that he believed it to be true and firmly believed it. Hallucination, and it was such a realistic hallucination. Even a qi cultivator would be able to firmly believe it after 3 months, and feel that it was something that had really happened. That obviously couldn't be an ordinary hallucinogen. Although there were many hallucinogenic hallucinogens, there were very few that could still remember what happened so clearly and with such certainty after the effects of the drug wore off. Other than that, Meng Qi crossed her arms in front of her chest, and her left hand gently tapped on her right arm. This was a habit of hers. Whenever she had something she was doubtful about, she liked to walk around like this. The little white tiger's essence soul squatted on the ground and blinked at Meng Qi, its little head turning around with her. Other than hallucinogens, what else? Meng Qi kept recalling the records in the books she had read. Not only could it produce hallucinations, but it could also make people so weak, but their minds seemed clear. Meng Qi suddenly remembered that when she was in the southern land in her previous life, she had met Li Che in the poisonous swamp. The southern land had the largest poisonous swamp in the 3,000 worlds, and the variety of poisonous insects was the best in the 4 realms. Li Che's Songlang Academy was the strongest medical cultivation sect in the southern land, and its research and experience on poisonous insects were also the best in the 4 realms. Meng Qi had once seen records of a poisonous insect in the medical book Li Che had lent her. Heart-eating insect. The records about the heart-eating insect appeared clearly in her mind. Although it was called this, in reality, the heart-eating insect would not really eat a cultivator's heart. Or rather, it would not only eat the heart. It would live in the human body and feed on the human body, continuously reproducing until it completely devoured the body, and finally, it would eat the heart and brain together. Before this, they liked to use the human brain as their nest and live there. Not only could they cause hallucinations, some strong heart-eating insects could even control Xiuzha. When the previous host was about to be eaten up by them, they would control the dying host to find the next host. This process would take at most half a year. The heart-eating insects would also target normal people, but they still preferred to choose Xiuzha. One was that the bodies of Xiuzha were usually stronger than normal people, and would not die so easily. The second was that other than flesh, the heart-eating insects that could absorb the Ling energy of Xiuzha could also grow faster. No wonder she did not find any problems just now. This kind of heart-eating insect living in a Xiuzha's body did not look like an injury. And this middle-aged man was a Xiuzha. The heart-eating insect in his body probably would not bear to eat him like this, and wanted to absorb more Ling energy. TSK. Meng Qi snorted lightly. The man's organs were still there, but his muscles were almost gone. If another 2 months passed, it would be too late to reverse the situation. Now that she had determined the cause of the other's illness, it was much easier. Heart-eating insects sounded terrifying, but they were not especially powerful among poisonous insects. They could not cultivate on their own, and were not civilized. They had low intelligence, and could not even be considered strange beasts. Meng Qi spoke again. Erythema, yiksha bamboo leaf, black frost grass. She wanted all insect repellents, and did not hesitate to say the names of 5 kinds of Ling medicines. The 5 Ling cauldron quickly put in the Ling medicines that Meng-Chi needed. The little white tiger's primordial spirit turned to look at its little friend, and reached out with a small paw to dig at the Ling medicines. Meng-Chi bent down to pick it up, and flicked out another 9th grade Ling stone. The 5 kinds of insect repellents quickly rolled in the 5 Ling cauldron, and quickly gave off waves of medicinal fragrance. The man who had been calmly describing his encounter suddenly screamed. His thin body jumped up high, and then landed back on the bed with a bam. So painful. He let out a long scream, his thin and weak body desperately rolling on the bed. Not long after, he rolled to the ground, hugging his head and rolling on the ground. It hurts so much. Ah. Damn it, you quack. Are you going to kill me or save me? Oh, it hurts so much. It hurts, aha. The man's shrill scream sounded in the small room. Quack, quack. I don't want you to save me. Get lost, quack. He was already weak, and in just a moment, sweat poured down his body like rain, soaking his clothes. After Meng-Chi took off his clothes, he did not tie his belt back, and now a small part of his chest was exposed. Under his thin skin, there seemed to be countless small soybeans squirming, crawling around quickly. The smell of medicine in the room became stronger, and the middle-aged male cultivator's strength became weaker. Soon, he lay on the floor of the room, exhausted, and looked at the sky blankly. He was still muttering, "Quack, quack, 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 quack." The little white tiger's primordial spirit seemed to understand his words. It roared and waved its little paws at him, as if it was angrily accusing the other party. Meng-Chi's expression was as calm as before. This kind of thing could no longer arouse her emotions. She squatted down and lifted the man, who had no strength, back to the bed with one hand. Now not only under the skin of the man's chest, but also under the skin of his arms and cheeks, one could see soybean-sized things moving at high speed. Meng-Chi raised her hand, and her silver medicine knife was already in her hand again. With a flash of the knife, the man's clothes were all torn, revealing his body, which was not good looking at all after being bedridden for 3 months, but definitely still belonged to a man's complete body. The little white tiger's primordial spirit, which had just been baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as if it wanted to teach him a lesson for Meng-Chi, was stunned. Its blue eyes stared blankly at Meng-Chi, and it saw the green-robed girl quickly raise her silver medicine knife again. The tip of the medicine knife was very sharp, narrow and sharp. Meng-Chi's movements were also very fast. Every time the knife went down, it would always leave a small drop of blood on the middle-aged male cultivator's body. But wherever the tip of the knife went, the little soybeans that were running quickly under the man's skin all stopped moving. In less than a quarter of an hour, there were hundreds of drops of blood on the man's skin. His ferocious face had completely calmed down, but his cheeks were flushed, and he didn't know where to look. Meng-Chi's eyes were cold, and she didn't even frown from beginning to end. Okay. Her voice was also cold, like a mountain stream, and it completely pulled the man's somewhat muddled mind back. After the medicine is applied, the wound will quickly recover. Meng-Chi paused. Take care of your body, and it will recover. Thank you, fellow Taoist. The middle-aged male cultivator was now completely awake, and he only felt that he was even more embarrassed than before. I can do it myself. Before he finished speaking, the medicinal liquid in the 5-spirit cauldron flew over, and Meng-Chi spread it evenly on his wound. Those soybean-sized bumps gradually disappeared, and the skin became flat again. Heart-eating worms. She was still thinking about heart-eating worms, which generally only lived in swamps. Because they left a wet environment, they didn't need to be dealt with by cultivators at all, and would turn into a pool of pus. Why did they appear in the woods near the man's city? According to what he said just now, there shouldn't be an environment suitable for heart-eating worms to live in. In fact, according to the book Li Che gave her, heart-eating worms were not terrible. In comparison, Meng-Chi knew of another kind of plant, which was far more terrible than heart-eating worms. That thing not only fed on flesh and blood, but also could devour souls. It was the soul-devouring vine that only existed in the Yao realm. Forget it. Meng-Chi shook her head, and even she felt that she was a little funny. This was just a test of the 10 Extremes mountain. She really thought too much. Okay. Meng Qi finally confirmed that the heart-eating worms in the man's body had been eradicated by her, and said to him, "Have a good rest." "Thank you, fellow Taoist." The man suddenly struggled to sit up. "When I was hunting in the woods in the early years, I once got a bamboo slip. It's just that the records on it were too profound, and it was related to medical skills, so I couldn't understand it at all. Fellow Taoist's medical skills are superb, and your heart is kind. That bamboo slip will forever be covered in dust with me. I will give that bamboo slip to fellow Taoist, and hope that fellow Taoist can save more people like me." "Thank you," Meng Qi said. She knew that this should be the extra reward for the third test. Meng Qi took the bamboo slip, sent a wisp of spirit energy into it, and quickly looked at the contents inside. Ha! She suddenly widened her eyes in surprise. This bamboo slip, could it be? Meng Qi looked at the contents of the bamboo slip with some disbelief. If this bamboo slip had to be given a name, it should probably be ancient poison scripture. Meng Qi hurriedly glanced at it, and saw the names of dozens of famous poisonous flowers and poisonous herbs that not only the 3,000 worlds, but also the Yao realm and the Devil realm were quite afraid of. In addition, there were some names of poisonous flowers that she had only heard of but had never seen before. They were probably extinct. In addition, there were some names of poisonous herbs that Meng Qi had never even heard of before. In addition to recording their respective effects, poisons, places of origin and cultivation methods, this bamboo slip also recorded. This was nothing. On the last page of this bamboo slip, there were two beautiful words that Meng Qi was even familiar with. Lin Yan. It's Senior Lin Yan again. Meng Qi put away the bamboo slip. She had already left the room. When she looked back, the inside was already like the previous rooms, covered in clouds and fog, making her unable to see anything clearly. So the reward was actually Senior Lin Yan's bamboo slip. Meng Qi's heart skipped a beat, and the bamboo slip that she was holding in her hand just now suddenly disappeared from her palm. At the same time, a new bamboo slip appeared in her spiritual sea. It was placed side by side with the bamboo slip that Lin Yan originally gave her, and was quickly wrapped in her spirit energy. It was indeed Senior Lin Yan's thing. Although she didn't know why Senior Lin Yan's bamboo slip could always enter her spiritual sea and receive the nourishment of her spirit energy. But this way, it would be much easier for Meng Qi to use the contents of the bamboo slip. She didn't need to use spirit energy now. With just a thought, she could easily see the contents of the bamboo slip. She and Senior Lin Yan were really quite fated. Meng Qi couldn't help but feel a little happy. This was the profound realm doctor closest to her, and also the senior she admired the most. She turned her head and saw the 5-spirit cauldron and Little White Tiger's essence soul floating beside her. Little White Tiger was hiding in the cauldron's belly, and it poked its little head out to look at Meng Qi. Its azure blue eyes looked a little strange. Meng Qi was a little amused by its gaze, and she couldn't help but reach out to rub its head. What's with that look? She knew that Little White Tiger's essence soul couldn't speak except for some of its own sounds. Meng Qi still asked with a smile, "Why are you looking at me like that?" As expected, the Little White Tiger's essence soul continued to grumble as its azure blue eyes stared fixedly at Meng Qi. What's wrong with it? Meng Qi couldn't help but look at her 5-spirit cauldron again. This little guy was strange. The 5-spirit cauldron shook its round body slowly, meaning that it didn't know either. Okay. Meng Qi waved her hand and didn't take it too seriously. We should go to the next house. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw the 5-spirit cauldron fly behind her and shake its body in front of a wooden sign. What's this? Why didn't I see it just now? The wooden sign was standing on the side of the road where Meng Qi came from. The 5-spirit cauldron shook its body again, and Little White Tiger's essence soul also shook with it. There was a hint of disdain in its blue eyes. You can only choose one of the last 3 houses. Meng Qi read the words on the wooden sign. You can pass this test if you complete one of the tests. After Meng Qi finished reading, the 5-spirit cauldron shook its body again. At the same time, she could feel the pride of her natal cauldron. It seemed to be happy that it had discovered something amazing for its master. Ahem. Meng Qi coughed lightly. The test here is quite interesting, she said. The five-spirit cauldron stopped and looked at Meng-Chi with little white tiger's essence soul in a daze. And I don't know if this wooden sign is a lie. Meng-Chi continued. In the first round, that person bewitched me to give up. Before the second round, the drunken dragon grass was the person who sowed discord and made me kill each other. Now if this third round is just a test of my medical skills, it's a little too simple. Meng-Chi said. The five-spirit cauldron and little white tiger's essence soul were still in a daze and didn't move. So let's go and see what's in the next two houses first. Meng-Chi seemed to be talking to herself, but also seemed to be talking to the five-spirit cauldron and little white tiger's essence soul. Maybe this wooden sign is also lying to us. If I really leave, it will directly judge me to fail the third round, and I might have to start again. At this point, Meng-Chi suddenly thought of the various patients she had encountered in the third round. Because it was a test, the diseases on those patients almost covered all kinds of different types. External injuries, internal injuries, poisons, demons injuries, strange beasts injuries. There were cultivators and ordinary people. There were men, women, children, and even pregnant women. It was simply a comprehensive collection of diseases. And there were also some difficult diseases that were rarely seen in the 3,000 worlds. To Meng-Chi, the third round was not so much a test as a reward. To her, it was simply like a fish in water. If it was not for the fact that she had to continue climbing the 10 Extremes mountain, she was even willing to stay here for a year and a half. However, not listening to the wooden sign was not entirely because she could not bear to leave. This 10 Extremes mountain was somewhat strange from the first round of the test. Those unfamiliar voices that spoke to them would always inadvertently bewitch them to walk on the wrong path. Therefore, Meng-Chi decided not to listen to the wooden sign. Even in the 10 Extremes mountain, even if this was a test, she should follow her heart. She understood, and her footsteps became firmer as she walked towards the second last room. At the same time, on the grassland at the foot of the 10 Extremes mountain, Si Kongxing and Chu Tianfeng were staring at each other. She looked at Chu Tianfeng, then looked at the silent Qin Xiaoma, and Pei Mufeng and the others who were standing not far away. Finally, she could not help but turn her head to look at Li Che and Xue Qingxian. Is the third round of the medical cultivation test that difficult? Li Che scratched his head. The last three tests are indeed a little tricky, but before entering the final test, there is a wooden sign by the roadside that clearly says that you can choose one to complete, and you will pass the test. His face suddenly turned red. I entered all three rooms and finally chose the simplest one. Us too. Si Kongxing nodded repeatedly. You only need to complete one of the last three tests. That's right. Xue Qingxian also said. I also chose one of them. Meng-Chi can't be. Si Kongxing frowned slightly. You didn't see the wooden sign, did you? Hee, the girl in yellow next to Xue Qingxian suddenly sneered. It's also possible that she hasn't passed the third test yet. There are so many patients inside. Even if according to the rules, you only need to choose one room on the left and right side of the road to complete. It still took me a full 32 hours to come out. Yuwenku. Calm the girl in yellow was Xue Zichen. Speaking up to this point, she moved her body. Even my brother took 30 hours. He is already the best medical cultivator who can enter here. Meng-Chi comes from a small sect. Her cultivation is not good, and she has seen few patients. Even if, Xue Zichen gently bit her lower lip. Even if she has the approval of Senior Lin Yan and received her inheritance, how much can she learn in just a few months? So isn't it normal for her to be a little slow? Si Kongxing glared at her. Am I wrong? Xue Zichen looked back, not to be outdone. Besides, I only came out for less than an hour. We also need to rest. What are you in a hurry for? Don't you know your friend's cultivation and skills? Humph. Si Kongxing was too lazy to pay attention to her. This Xue Zichen didn't seem to like Meng-Chi. Although it wasn't obvious, there was always a trace of hostility in her words. What are you snorting for? You. Ah! Xue Zichen suddenly exclaimed halfway through her words. The grassland they were on, which was obviously very calm just now, suddenly shook and made a rumbling sound. What happened? Si Kongxing jumped up and saw that not only the grassland, even the distant Shijua mountain peak was shaking. as if something huge had happened here. She was really anxious now. Mengqi hasn't come out yet, will she be okay? Chu Tianfeng's expression changed, and subconsciously looked at Qin Xiaoma. The black-robed youth didn't say anything, and looked at Yan Xian. This son of the Mirror Moon Sky Gate Master was probably the person who understood Shijue Mountain the most among them. You guys. Yan Xian raised his eyes to look at the sky, and said with some shock. Look over there. They raised their heads, and looked at the sky with all the Shijue still on the grassland. There, a long rainbow stretched across the sky from Shijue Mountain towards them. What is this? Si Kongxing rushed to ask. Yan Xian shook his head and muttered. I don't know either, everything that happens in Shijue Mountain is a secret, no one knows. Look. Si Kongxing suddenly jumped up, and pointed at the rainbow. Isn't that Mengqi? Chapter 157. What is this? There were more and more cultivators on the grass. At this time, they were all attracted by the movement in the sky and looked up. The seven-colored rainbow bridge was faintly discernible. Si Kongxing opened her eyes wide and saw it clearly. Look. That's not Mengqi. That's just her shadow. There's more over there. Si Kongxing suddenly pointed to the sky and shouted. Everyone looked up and saw a second figure slowly appearing beside Mengqi's shadow. The black-robed youth stood tall. Even though he was high up in the sky, he was still a little far from them. Everyone could also see his handsome features. That youth looked cold and sharp, like a sword that was about to be unsheathed. All the cultivators on the grass turned their heads and looked at the black-robed youth's shadow. It was the pavilion master of Falling Star Pavilion, Pei Mufeng. However, before they could say anything, a third figure appeared in the sky. In the blue sky, the man in the same black robe looked a little hazy. His back was straight. In terms of appearance, he would not lose to Pei Mufeng. Junior brother Qin. Someone murmured. Qin Xiaoma took a deep breath and turned his head to look at that person. Si Kongxing's eyes widened. She looked at the sky, then at Pei Mufeng, then at Qin Xiaoma. Finally, she murmured, What's going on? Yes, what's going on? Chu Tianfeng was also stunned. Why are you two also, Xiaoshiding? Before he finished speaking, a fourth figure appeared in the sky. Yan Xian. There were even more people who knew this young master of Jingyue Heaven. Almost everywhere on the grass, there were voices calling out Yan Xian's name. Of course, there were also many people who knew that he had fallen from the top of the younger generation of the 3,000 worlds to the current trash appearance. You. Si Kongxing looked up at this scene, her eyes filled with surprise. At this moment, the fifth figure finally appeared in the sky. It was Xue Qingxian. Brother! Xue Zichen exclaimed. I have you. Xue Qingxuan's reputation was no less than Pei Mufeng's. He was almost set to be the future leader of the Wind Alliance. At the same time, he was the most outstanding young medical cultivator in the 3,000 worlds. He had many friends. Adding on his identity as a medical xiu, he had always been liked by Xiuzha. Si Kongxing and Chu Tianfeng looked at each other, and hurriedly looked at Qin Xiaoma. Since he was also here, he must know something. Qin Xiaoma looked serious and said nothing. What the hell is going on? Chu Tianfeng was anxious. This guy's silence was really annoying sometimes. Did he not know that this was the 10 Extremes Mountain? Since Mengqi was involved, this matter had to be handled with extreme caution. Soon the sixth figure appeared. This time it was finally someone Si Kongxing and the others did not recognize. However, many Xiuzha here clearly knew this person. They immediately shouted. It's Qiao Ran from the Broken Space Sect. They did not recognize this person. However, Si Kongxing knew about the Broken Space Sect. After all, this sect had been looking for Mengqi for a long time. The grass was instantly filled with whispers. Not to mention Qiao Ran, just the 3 words Broken Space Sect were enough to make people revere. Especially the disciples who could come here. They all came from the 10 great sects of the 3,000 worlds and 4 worlds. They were all very well informed. This Qiao Ran was the direct disciple of the new sect leader, Ling Ji, who had just seized the position of sect leader by force. It was said that he was the most outstanding disciple he was proud of. At this moment, no one hesitated. At this moment, 6 figures appeared in the sky. Other than Meng Qi, they were all genius disciples from large sections. That Meng Qi, although he did not belong to any sect, he was recognized by the ancient great Dr. Lin Yan. Just this identity alone was far superior to those disciples of normal medical cultivation sections. Li Che stood not far from Xikongxing. He was also quietly looking at Meng Qi's elegant face. "Xixiang, do you know what's going on?" His sect's disciple was asking him in a low voice. "I'm not sure either." Li Che shook his head lightly. Xue Chengxian and Meng Qi were both there. They were also medical cultivators. Li Che clenched his fist slightly. Just now, they had fought side by side and detoxified the Xiuzhe here. He met his Shidi's puzzled gaze and smiled embarrassedly. "I really don't know what's going on." "Brother," Xue Zichen also asked anxiously. "What's going on?" Xue Qingxian did not immediately answer his sister. Instead, he looked at Pei Mufeng and Qin Xiaoma. They could be considered to have fought side by side in the Starfall Sea. He indeed had a wide circle of friends. After all, they had experienced life and death together. He also wanted to know if these 2 people were there for the same reason as him. "Brother," Xue Zichen frowned. "What's going on? Say something." She anxiously stomped her feet. Why was that Meng Qi also there? She pouted slightly, a little unhappy. Ever since that time in the apricot forest, Meng Qi showed his extraordinary talent in front of so many medical cultivation sects, and received the recognition of Senior Lin Yan. Whether it was the elders in her family or friends, they all seemed to like to compare her with Meng Qi. In the past, she was the favored daughter of God. She was the most favored daughter of the Wind Alliance's Xue family. She was also the most talented medical cultivator among the girls of her generation in the Wind Alliance. Even her 2 sisters could not compare to her. Xue Zichen was young and beautiful. She came from a noble family, and was extremely talented. She was the Dao companion candidate that the young disciples of the Wind Alliance, and even the entire West Kingdom, or the 3,000 worlds, were very happy to choose. But ever since Meng Qi appeared, people were very happy to compare the 2 of them when they talked about her. Although she was still the apple of the Xue family's master's eye and was very likely to be the sister of the future Wind Alliance master, everyone still respected her, spoiled her, and gave in to her. But there were still some things that seemed to have become different. Xue Zichen could not tell what was different. When the elders looked at her, their gazes were still loving. When her peers and friends were with her, they would still give in to her and envy her. But there would always be 1 or 2 inadvertent moments when everyone would mention Meng Qi when they saw her. Perhaps it was because the 2 of them were about the same age. Or perhaps it was because before Meng Qi appeared, she was the most anticipated genius among the younger generation of female medical cultivators. They would joke and say regretfully, "If it was you who passed the apricot forest boundary test that day, your father would be very happy." There would also be those young male cultivators who used to chase after her, curry favor with her and adore her. They would occasionally mention Meng Qi in a teasing tone, saying that the elders in their families had also hinted that if they could become friends with Meng Qi, they must seize the opportunity. It had to be known that the elders of these young male cultivators used to like and value her the most in their marriage. Of course, there would also be close friends who had a crush on her brother who would ask her if her family really wanted her brother, Xue Chengxian, to marry Meng Qi. Xue Zichen could not help but stomp her feet when she thought of this. She had her pride, and she could not help but secretly compare herself with Meng Qi. She had heard her father talk about this trip to the 10 Extremes mountain long ago, and had made a lot of preparations for this. She believed that she would definitely perform better than most people, and perhaps even better than her brother. She would once again become the proud daughter of heaven that made her family and her father proud. Of course, she would also leave Meng Qi far behind. After all, she was the eldest daughter of the #1 medical cultivator sect in the 3,000 worlds. What she had learned and seen since she was young was not something that Meng Qi could compare to. She had only won against her once because of a coincidence and her luck. Xue Zichen believed that as long as the 2 of them were given an absolutely fair competition, she would definitely not lose to Meng Qi. Therefore, she worked very hard in the first 3 stages. She also believed that the time she spent was definitely shorter than Meng Qi. Even when in the second stage, her brother helped Meng Qi because of the elders in the family and gave her the Shui family's spiritual medicine scripture. She still believed that she would not lose. Meng Qi came from a small sect that she had never heard of. When it came to a real fair competition like this, it was impossible for her to lose. But now Shui Zichen looked at her silent brother, and then looked at the 6 figures in the sky. Other than Meng Qi, the rest of them could be considered as geniuses of various sects and were famous. But this Meng Qi, why was it Meng Qi again? Shui Zichen could not help but stomp her feet again. How could this Meng Qi be so lucky? She could always get involved. What did she do this time? She clearly came out earlier than her, and even earlier than Li Che. Shui Zichen looked around. Among all the medical cultivators here, she was clearly the first one to come out except for her brother. Brother! Shui Zichen stomped her feet again, and reached out to grab her brother's arm. Why aren't you saying anything? What happened? Shui Qingxian shook his head and said, I'm not sure yet, but maybe. He hesitated for a moment, then strode towards Pei Mufeng. Shui Zichen looked left and right, then quickly followed. Sect Master Pei. Shui Qingxian cupped his hands towards Pei Mufeng. Fellow Taoist Shui. Pei Mufeng returned the greeting. I have a question to ask Sect Master Pei. I wonder if, before he could finish, he heard Pei Mufeng say, they didn't skip. They completed all the missions. As expected. Shui Qingxian nodded. Brother. Shui Zichen looked at Pei Mufeng, then at her brother. She was a little confused. You're saying? Humph. A young man behind Shui Zichen snorted coldly. What they're saying is that they didn't skip a single mission in the 3rd stage that we just went through. They completed all the missions there. What? Shui Zichen was stunned and hurriedly turned around. Behind her, the black-robed young man Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiuma walked over side by side. The one who just spoke was Chu Tianfeng. Beside them was the unhappy Si Kongxing. It seems that Brother Qin is the same. Shui Chengxian smiled and looked at the black-robed young man. Brother, you're the same? Shui Zichen looked at her brother in disbelief. But you, she opened her mouth but suddenly couldn't say anything. Her black pearl-like bright and beautiful eyes suddenly widened. Shui Zichen had always felt that her talent wasn't inferior to her brother's. She even secretly compared the time she took to cultivate to reach the 3rd realm of medicine. She actually took less time than her brother. She was also ambitious. She also thought that if she was the eldest daughter in the family, her father would place high hopes on her, and the elders would secretly choose her as the future head of the family. But now Shui Zichen felt that she was already very fast in the 3rd stage. Just like Li Che, she only chose the easiest of the 3 most difficult missions. As for the rooms in front of her, she quickly realized that she only needed to treat one of them to skip the room on the opposite side of the same row. She also secretly observed the time that her brother came out. She believed that he must have done the same as her. So he was only faster than her by an hour. So Shui Zichen opened her mouth. In fact, no one asked her what happened, but her face quietly became hot. It turned out that her brother didn't skip a single room, and didn't skip any of the last 3 most difficult missions. Even so, he was still faster than her by an hour. It seemed that she still had a long way to go. Her brother was really very powerful. And this Meng Qi, Shui Zichen thought and looked up at the figure in the sky. This Meng Qi was also very powerful. She was just a little slower than her. If she also didn't skip any of the missions. She silently calculated in her heart. If it were her, she definitely wouldn't be able to come out now if she didn't skip any of the missions. Now, she might not be able to reach the last 3 rooms. Shui Zichen pursed her lips, and the hands hanging by her side quietly clenched a little. She would work hard. Even if she lost to her brother by a little, she would never lose to this Meng Qi, who was inferior to her in terms of background, sect. She would become stronger and more powerful. There hadn't been any movement in the sky for a while. The 6 figures were reflected in the sky just like that. The Xiuzha on the grass discussed, and more or less came to a conclusion. Holy shit. Ever since we all got poisoned by the drunken dragon grass in the last mission, and that person instigated us to kill each other, I felt that this place was very strange, and gave off a feeling that something wasn't right. As expected, we've been tricked again. So at the beginning, what was the shortest time? And then differentiating where we were when we started climbing the 10 Extremes mountain. Was that also a lie? Is there anyone who can explain whether it's a lie or not? If it wasn't for that hint, I wouldn't have been so smug when I found out that I could skip half of the missions, and ran so fast. That's right, that's right. Can anyone come out and explain what's going on? I say don't rush. According to the rules of this broken place, it might not be a good thing to pick them out. Seconded. It might be a case of shooting the bird that sticks out. That's right. Maybe the big shots of the 10 Extremes mountain did it on purpose. Look at the 6 people, everyone saw it clearly. They also know who the other party is. Then the 10 Extremes mountain will send another one. These 6 people will have a certain advantage in the next climb. TSK. I feel that it's really possible. If they want to give a reward, just give it directly. With this, everyone will know who is in the lead in the 3 missions. At that time, there might be people targeting them. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. That's right, that's why it might not be a good thing. The Xiuzha discuss one after another. At the beginning, after everyone knew the crux of the matter, they were still a little annoyed, and felt that they were tricked again. But these 6 figures were hanging in the sky, and everyone saw it clearly. They also didn't see Pei Mufeng, Xue Qingxian, and the others who came out already get any benefits. Slowly, the thoughts of the Xiuzha started to change. Some Xiuzha even faintly rejoiced in others' misfortune. After all, a place like the 10 Extremes mountain, to put it nicely, after leaving, no one would know what happened inside. It was almost like there were no rules to restrict everyone. Don't look at how Xue Qingxian and Meng Qi had just saved everyone. When Meng Qi and Lu Qingran had a dispute, they would stand out to help her and firmly stand on her side. But once it involved a real struggle for benefits, to these people, the sex benefits and their own cultivation were still the most important. Some people already started to ponder in their hearts. Anyway, I won't take the initiative to attack those 2. But the other few, if there's a chance, I can deal with them, right? If there's really someone who doesn't care about anything and completely shed all pretense of cordiality to deal with them, it shouldn't be a problem if we don't step on them, and don't help them, right? As time passed, the atmosphere on the grassland also became more and more solemn and strange. Many Xiuzha stopped talking, and gathered in 2s and 3s with a few fellow disciples or good friends. From time to time, they would look at Pei Mufeng and the others. Instantly, this place became a bit strange again. Why hasn't Meng Qi come out yet? Xikongxing and the others naturally also felt the change here. She stomped her feet a bit anxiously and looked around. Where did she go? The 4th stage hasn't opened yet, I keep feeling. Keep feeling. She lightly bit her lower lip. Even she felt the change in the atmosphere. Chu Tianfeng's face was even darker. As the young palace master of Burning Sky Palace, he had seen more of this kind of thing. The Xiuzha here could also draw their swords against fellow disciples, not to mention a few outsiders who had a competitive relationship with them. Hey. Chu Tianfeng leaned over and asked Qin Xioma, "What do you think?" "I don't think much." Qin Xioma's expression was slightly cold, and his gaze was heavy as he looked at the Xiuzha who would secretly glance at him from time to time. "I will do my best." He didn't say the last few words out loud. Chu Tianfeng snorted lightly, his heart full of annoyance. Why had he been in such a hurry to come out? If something really happened later, he wouldn't be able to do anything, right? He paced back and forth in irritation. A cold light suddenly flashed through his eyes. He reached out with his left hand, and his long fingers spread. A red lotus appeared in the air above his palm. If something really happens later, I will not be merciful. When he finished speaking, he was gritting his teeth, but his voice was very cold. Xikongxing had interacted with them for a long time, but she had never seen this young palace master of Burning Sky Palace like this. She looked at Chu Tianfeng like this and unconsciously shuddered. What do you mean? All right. Chu Tianfeng did not answer her. The one who spoke was Qin Xiuma. The corner of his lips rose slightly. Just what I wanted. You. Si Kongxing was puzzled. What do you mean? You don't need to know. Chu Tianfeng made up his mind, and was not as irritable as before. This is what we need to do. What do you mean, Chu Tianfeng? Si Kongxing was not happy. We can be considered friends of life and death. Don't think about leaving me aside no matter what you two do. Then you will know later. Chu Tianfeng glanced at her and said, You two are so annoying. Can't you not keep me in suspense and say it out loud? Si Kongxing was dissatisfied. The three of them had been standing some distance away from the crowd. They had also deliberately lowered their voices. Other than the three of them, no one else heard. Si Kongxing still did not know what had happened, but she could see that the situation was more serious than she had imagined. She also became serious, and warily scanned the surroundings. Mengqi will be fine, right? Why hasn't she come out yet? At this time, almost all the Xiuzha who had entered the 10 Extremes mountain were here. Probably only Mengqi had not left the third test. As if to explain Si Kongxing's words, all the Xiuzha on the grass heard a light ding sound, and then a cold female voice sounded. 10 Extremes mountain great battlefield, prepare for battle, open. That voice was not loud, and very pleasant to the ears. However, there was no emotion, and it sounded as cold as ice. Following the voice, the grass that had been silent for a while suddenly became noisy. 10 Extremes mountain great battlefield. What was that? The Xiuzha looked at each other. You look at me, I look at you. They could only see confusion in each other's eyes. Everyone knew that once they left the 10 Extremes mountain, they would not remember everything that had happened here. However, after 10,000 years of inheritance, everyone naturally felt that since it was called the 10 Extremes mountain, it was definitely used for climbing. Great battlefield, what was this? However, this place was not the respective sect of the Xiuzha, and no one came out to explain to them what was going on. They heard that cold female voice continue to say, The great battlefield will officially begin after 15 minutes. The battlefield will be divided into two camps. The Xiuzha who passed the third test will be the heaven camp. The Xiuzha who did not pass the third test will be the earth camp. Did not pass the third test? The Xiuzha seemed to have understood something, and they all raised their heads to look at the sky. Then wasn't it obvious who was the heaven camp, who was the earth camp? These people were still hanging in the sky. So this was 6 against all of them. Some Xiuzha instantly rejoiced. It seemed that not passing the third test was not a bad thing. Who knew that this 10 Extremes mountain would play such a trick? Even if the other 6 were all geniuses, they had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers right now. I will announce the rules. That cold female voice continued to say. First, the heaven camp and earth camp Xiuzha can use any method to attack the other party, including but not limited to divine weapons, talismans, poisons, poisonous insects and beasts. After being injured, they can use medicinal pills, natural treasures, and talismans to heal themselves. The effect is the same as outside of the 10 Extremes mountain. The heaven camp Xiuzha have 3 chances to revive. The earth camp Xiuzha will directly fail if they fail, and will have the chance to continue participating in the 10 Extremes mountains test. The Xiuzha were in an uproar again. In other words, as long as they lost, they would be directly sent away? However, thinking about it, the other party had 6 people. Even if each person had 3 lives, it would still be difficult. Added together, it would not even be 20. On their side, there were 100 people. Even the sect members of those 6 people might not help the other party. After all, the 10 Extremes mountain was a great help to the Xiuzha. If they could fight to stay, no one would be willing to give it up. Most of the Xiuzha on the grass swept away their previous disappointment, and all of them became spirited. Even if they had 3 chances, looking at the current situation, it was clear that their side had the advantage. The 10 great sects of the 4 realms, each sect had 3 disciples that could enter the 10 Extremes mountain. Adding on the extra spots given by Jingyue Sky, there were a total of 130 Xiuzha that entered the 10 Extremes mountain this time. Among them, other than Mengqi and Yanxian, the weakest was a complete Yuanying Xiuzha. Among them, there were mainly fused soul Xiuzha. and there were even some strong Xiuzha that had just stepped into the profound void realm. These were the most promising and outstanding disciples of the younger generation in the 10 great sections. Any 10 of them gathered together was a group of Xiuzha that could not be underestimated. What's more, other than the 6 people on their side, there were a total of 114 Xiuzha. There were spell Xiuzha, sword Xiuzha, and medical Xiuzha. No matter if it was attacking or defending, there would not be a problem. Even if the sect members of those 6 people all chose to help them, they still had an absolute advantage. The Xiuzha instantly became excited. This was the 10 Extremes Mountain. To non-disciples of Jingyue Sky, it was an opportunity that could only be entered once every 100 years. This time, the 10 Extremes Mountain opened once every 10,000 years. If they could win against the other party, the benefits that they could obtain in the 10 Extremes Mountain was absolutely unimaginable. What's more, some Xiuzha even had a trace of secret pleasure in their hearts. Right now, the 6 people that were assigned to the Heaven Barracks, other than Meng Qi, were the true geniuses of the 3 realms' younger generation. They were the same generation that crushed them as they grew after they stepped onto the path of cultivation. Even though not everyone would be jealous, since there was competition in the 10 Extremes Mountain. Winning against the other party in such a relatively fair competition would also fill many people with anticipation. Just as that icy voice finished announcing the first rule, the gazes of the Xiuzha became burning with anticipation. But no one spoke first. They stood quietly on the spot, listening to that icy female voice continue. Second, the Heaven Barracks will attack, the Earth Barracks will defend. If you cannot defeat the other party within 44 hours, exchange. The Xiuzha on the grass didn't do anything. Xing almost jumped up. The Heaven Barracks will attack? She couldn't believe her ears. She turned to look at Qin Xioma. You guys will attack? The 6 of you will attack, and we will defend with 100 people. She muttered and repeated this inconceivable rule. But if it's like this, isn't it too easy to defend? Even she knew that the Xiuzha that could appear here were the elites of the elites. Don't talk about 6 people attacking 100 people. Even if 60 people attacked, they might not be able to defeat them. What kind of joke was this? And if they couldn't defeat them within 44 hours, the offense and defense would change. That was the other way around, 100 people attacking 6 people? Wasn't this easy? Xing blinked her eyes. Qin Xiuma's expression was also abnormally serious. Shitty. His Shixiang Wei Yuanzhong walked to his side and grimaced. I didn't think that the matter would develop to this step. What plans do you have? There was only him and Qin Shidi left on Cloud Treading Peak. Wei Yuanzhong also knew that in terms of talent, he couldn't compare to Qin Shidi no matter what. If he had to choose one of the 2 to stay for the sect, he would rather choose Qin Xioma to stay. Qin Xioma glanced at him, his tone faint. Let's talk about it when it starts. That's true. Wei Yuanzhong grimaced. Right now, he really felt that this 10 Extreme Mountain definitely wasn't the holy cultivation ground that the outside world said it was. He didn't know what kind of people were here. They could only hear sounds but couldn't see people. However, each one of them was unspeakably strange. From the start, they had been tricked into taking the time to pass because they had to rely on this to determine their position in 10 Extreme Mountain. Then the person that had been sowing discord before, now using this method to divide them into 2 groups and kill each other. This really didn't seem like a holy cultivation ground at all. It was more like someone had purposefully gathered them together and enjoyed watching them kill each other. Wei Yuanzhong looked at his Shidi worriedly. There was no other way now. They could only take 1 step at a time. Third. This time, that female voice didn't make them wait too long and quickly announced the next rule. The 6 Xiuzha from the Heaven Barracks who pass the 3rd challenge, for every 12 hours they persist, they will receive a 10 extreme reward. When the battle starts, they will randomly receive 3 reinforcements. Regardless of the cultivation of the reinforcements are limited to perfect spirit severing. 3 reinforcements, even if they were all perfect spirit severing, it shouldn't be a big deal. However, Everyone had already confirmed that the 6 people in the sky were the Xiuzha from the heaven barracks this time. And they were from the earth barracks side. Thinking about it this way, even if those 6 people had 3 more perfect spirit-severing helpers, it actually wasn't a big deal. As for the 10 extreme reward that was given every 12 hours, it probably wouldn't be too exaggerated. It definitely wouldn't be a reward that could help them completely destroy their own side. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a need to have a face-off battle like this. Fourth, after a heaven barracks Xiuzha dies 3 times, they can choose to join the earth barracks team, but they only have 3 chances. Once this rule was announced, there was finally some reaction from the grass. Those Xiuzha that clearly belonged to the earth barracks instantly went into an uproar. Poison. This rule was really too poisonous. The person that could think of this rule was so scheming that it was terrifying. To explain this rule, it basically meant that the first 3 people from the heaven barracks that used up all 3 of their lives could join the earth barracks. That way, even if the heaven barracks lost in the end, they could still continue to stay in 10 Extreme Mountain. They could even enter the earth barracks and obtain the final victory, and receive the benefits of this battle. The present situation was that the earth barracks had an absolute advantage in numbers. The 6 people from the heaven barracks should be clear that their chances of winning were very small. This way, before the battle even started, the heaven barracks might start to have internal strife, because what they were pursuing was not victory, but a quick death. However, they quickly realized that there would definitely be corresponding rules and restrictions. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a need to fight. The other side didn't care who was more important, and could declare the battle over if 3 of them died. Fifth. As expected, that icy female voice quickly spoke and announced the next rule. Earth barracks Xiuzha that were saved by the heaven barracks medical Xiu can join the heaven barracks. There is no limit to the number of people. Heaven barracks Xiuzha that were saved by the earth barracks medical Xiu will die once. This is... Many Xiuzha made puzzled sounds. This was a new rule. Didn't there need to be restrictions on the previous rule? But this way, it was relatively fair. Even though the other side only had 6 people, they had 2 medical Xiu. One of them was the most outstanding youth of the younger generation of the Wind Alliance, the strongest medical Xiu sect in the 3,000 worlds. The other was the ancient great Dr. Elder Lin Yuan, who had become famous in the 3,000 worlds in the last year, and was personally acknowledged as a friend. Some people even suspected that this rule was set up because of these 2 people. This way, the other side could pull the Xiuzha on their side into the heaven barracks through saving people. No wonder they were allowed to attack first even though they only had 6 people. Thinking about it, if they defended first, with the current division of the camp strength, they might lose in the blink of an eye. But if they attacked first for 24 hours, they might be able to accumulate a certain amount of strength. The grassland became silent again. Overall, the 5 rules were more useful for the earth barracks, which had more people. But after all, the other side had Pei Mufeng, Qin Xioma and Xue Qingxian, as well as Su Zian from the Broken Space sect. Moreover, they had 3 external aids, and the 10 absolutes reward every 12 hours. Adding on the 5th rule, it was hard to say what would happen in the end. As for the earth barracks, they had the absolute advantage of numbers, and could use the 4th rule to pull the 3 people into their camp first. If they could really do that, then there was basically no need to fight this time. The 6th rule, which is also the most important one. The cold female voice spoke again. This time, she did not speak quickly. Slowly, she said one word at a time. On the path of cultivation, Daozhang, please do not obstruct. 10 Extremes Mountain does not keep the weak, and does not keep people with weak hearts. Especially now that it involved the Battle of 10 Extremes Mountain, anything could happen. Qin Xioma could decisively kill the person who betrayed him with one sword, so he would definitely not be soft-hearted to others. Yan Xian quickly followed. Qin Xioma and the others gathered together. The surrounding cultivators all subconsciously took a step back, keeping a distance from them. Although the battle had not started yet, the 2 camps were already starting to become distinct. More than 100 people stood on one side. In comparison, the 5 people on their side seemed so small. 10 Extremes Mountain Battlefield open. That female voice sounded again. As her voice fell, more than 100 light pillars descended from the sky, enveloping all of them. In an instant, the grassland became empty. The more than 100 practitioners who were here just now had all disappeared. Qin Xioma only felt a flash in front of his eyes, and he quickly heard a familiar voice by his ear. "You're here?" He immediately responded. "Mengqi?" Xue Qingxian first looked around. They should be in a paradise now. This paradise was not big. Other than the fact that the spiritual energy was especially dense, and even cultivators like them could quickly replenish their spiritual energy through breathing, there was nothing else special about it. Mengqi, who was dressed in a green robe, stood in the innermost part of the paradise. In front of her was a smooth stone wall that was about the height of 2 people. The side of the stone wall that was facing everyone was so shiny that it could reflect their figures clearly. Mengqi's gaze swept across the 5 people in front of her. She also never thought that the final result of the 3rd test would be like this. "You heard what that person said just now?" Qin Xioma asked. "Why didn't you go out?" "And I heard it." Mengqi nodded. "There's not much time, I'll make it short." They only had 24 hours, and she could clearly hear the cold female voice. Although she didn't know how the 6 of them could win in such a situation, for the time being, she still didn't know. However, after thinking about it, Mengqi also knew that the first 24 hours must be very important to them. "After I finished the last task, I was directly sent here. This," she pointed to the shiny stone and said, "This is a huge piece of stardust. It was refined with daybreak flower juice for 1,000 years. Daybreak flower? Stardust." Xue Qingxian could not help but step forward. He looked at the huge stone in disbelief. No wonder the spiritual energy here is so dense. It seems that it's all because of this piece of stardust. "What's a daybreak flower?" Qiao Ren asked. He had not spoken much until now. It was only now that he spoke for the first time. As Qiao Ren asked, he could not help but look at Mengqi. Master had warned him repeatedly that if this Mengqi lost a single strand of hair in the 10 Extremes mountain, he would send him to the sect's most dangerous and brutal Sword Ray Valley to train for 10 years. The Sword Ray Valley of the Broken Void sect was a famous dangerous place in the entire 3,000 worlds. It was said that there were traces left behind by the ancient sword cultivator and formation cultivator's duel. It was extremely dangerous. Although some people said that if a cultivator could come out of there alive, his sword technique would definitely improve greatly. In time, he would definitely be the world's #1 sword cultivator. But first, you have to be able to come out alive. Qiao Ren knew that Master never joked with him. He subconsciously straightened his back. In this moment of distraction, he did not hear Mengqi's words clearly. He only heard her say, "Pills refined with daybreak flower juice can allow people to speak their true thoughts." Small book pavilion. Then what is this piece of stardust that was refined with the daybreak flower juice and placed here for? Xue Qingxian also asked. "To see one's heart," Yan Xian said slowly. "Hiss." Qiao Ren gasped and repeated, "To see one's heart?" He hurriedly took a step back, as if he was afraid that something would be revealed. Mengqi could not help but smile. "It's not that magical. When I first arrived here, a voice told me that our 3 external aids would be obtained through this." Ha! This time everyone was curious. Mengqi took a step forward and said, "Among the 6 of us, we can choose 3 people ourselves," and then she pointed to the side of the stone. There was a palm-sized box of red dye that looked like ink. After pressing the ink and sticking it on the stone, we can summon the person we trust the most in our hearts. He will become our external aid this time. Mengqi said again, "Of course you heard it too. Even if this person is a Mahayana powerhouse, he only has the strength of a Funshan paragon." "I see." Qiao Ren nodded. He looked around and asked, "Then who will do it?" Qin Xioma shook his head and said first, "I can't do it." The person he trusted the most was right in front of him, and was about to fight side by side with him. There was no need to use this thing at all. Xue Qingxian was stunned and looked into Mengqi's eyes. "The person you trust the most?" "Yes." Mengqi nodded and quickly explained. "It's the person you trust the most in your heart. You can completely trust him with your life. No matter what happens, you will never doubt him. She repeated what she heard. Finally, Meng-Chi had a good memory and repeated it almost word for word. Then she thought for a while and said, "But considering what we will encounter next, there are already 2 medical cultivators here, fellow Taoist Shui and I. My suggestion is that the best external aid we can recruit should be a Dharma cultivator or a sword cultivator." Meng-Chi thought that Shui Chengxian was from the Wind League and was surrounded by medical cultivators. It was actually not very suitable for their team to recruit another medical cultivator. It was best to recruit a sword cultivator or Dharma cultivator who had stronger attacks. "I can't do it." Sure enough, Shui Chengxian shook his head. But he quickly smiled bitterly and said, "It's not because I can only summon a medical cultivator, but because I don't have such a person who I can completely trust and don't need to be on guard against." Meng-Chi, Qiao Ran, and even Pei Mufeng and Qin Xiuma glanced at him. There's no other way. Perhaps it was because this was the 10 Extremes mountain. No matter what he said, they would not remember it after leaving. Or perhaps it was because of the upcoming battle. Shui Chengxian also wanted to relax a little. At least he could be honest with these temporary teammates. He spread his hands and said helplessly, "I'm the eldest son of the Shui family of the Wind League." As soon as he said this, Qin Xiuma and the others understood. "I don't have one either." Yan Xian's tone was indifferent. He was also the young sect master of Jingyue Heaven. Maybe he did before, but after that time, even his father. Yan Xian's heart suddenly moved. He turned and quickly glanced at Meng-Chi. Then what about her? Should he trust her? "Let me do it," Pei Mufeng said indifferently. He stepped forward and stood next to the Stardust Stone. He asked, "You're using this, right?" He paused and suddenly asked, "What if someone I trust is in the Earth Barracks?" "Your junior brother?" Meng-Chi suddenly thought of something and asked, "Su Zijuan?" "Yes." Pei Mufeng nodded. "Is that so?" Meng-Chi had not thought about this before. She hesitated slightly and quickly called out, "Senior, are you still there? Senior?" "I'm here." After a while, just as Meng-Chi was about to call out again, a voice sounded. "What?" This voice belonged to the person who gave Meng-Chi the red karmic fire lotus in the first stage of the poison swamp. "May I ask what will happen if the reinforcements we call out are from the Earth Barracks?" Meng-Chi asked. "It won't happen." Meng-Chi gently stuck out her tongue. She had already realized that this senior's temper had obviously become much more irritable when they met again this time. Even if you pull 3 people over from there, the outcome will be the same. So hurry up and die," the person said again. Meng-Chi spread her hands with a helpless expression. She actually did not hate this senior, except that his words were a bit strange. In terms of sarcasm, he was not as good as Ji Wujiang. Moreover, the other party had given her enough benefits. If it were not for that red karmic fire lotus, perhaps she would have been trapped before the start of the second stage with no way out. After that person finished speaking, he disappeared. Pei Mufeng reached out and gently pressed on the box, then reached out and pressed on the stardust. Specks of starlight flew out from the stardust stone and entered his chest. Soon, those specks of starlight flew out of his chest and returned to the stardust. With a soft whoosh, a tall and handsome young man walked out of the stardust. "Senior brother?" Su Zijuan looked at everyone in surprise. "Fellow Taoist Meng, fellow Taoist Shui? You guys. Why am I here?" "In short, you're now one of us," Meng-Chi said. "This." Su Zijuan was still confused. Pei Mufeng led him to the side. "I'll explain. You guys continue." "Okay." Meng-Chi nodded. Su Zijuan was also someone who had fought side by side in the Starfall Sea. It was great that Pei Mufeng trusted him so much. Then, Meng-Chi looked at Qiao Ran. This was an expert from the space-breaking sect. It would be good if another sword cultivator could come. "Can you?" Meng-Chi asked. Qiao Ran choked for a moment. "I can, but..." He didn't know how to explain it to Meng-Chi. "Then you go first." Meng-Chi waved his hand. "Please." "But..." Qiao Ran took a step forward and looked at the red box hesitantly. "What's wrong?" Meng-Chi asked. "It's..." Qiao Ran said, Before we came here, the person that senior said was at most at the peak of the spirit-severing stage. Yes. Mengqi nodded. I'll tell you the truth. The person I trust is very strong now, really strong. But I don't know what he'll be like when he's at the peak of the spirit-severing stage. Xiao Ran was a bit cautious. He really didn't dare to relax at all when it came to junior sister Mengqi. And to be honest, he was nervous when he thought about how he might call for reinforcements. It's okay. This time it was Pei Mufeng who spoke. The peak of the spirit-severing stage is enough. He had already quickly explained the whole matter to his junior brother, and walked back side by side with Su Zijuan. Then, Xiao Ran put his hand into the box and gritted his teeth. Then I'll call for reinforcements. Mengqi. When they first met this Xiao Ran, he was following behind the powerful sect leader Ling Ji from the space-breaking sect. He looked very strong and cold. But he wasn't. Xiao Ran's hand was already on the stardust stone. The same specks of starlight danced. Then, with a soft swoosh, a man in a green robe strode out of the stardust stone. Mengqi. Mengqi. The person who came was wearing a green robe and a tall hat. Even though he looked to be in his 40s, his hair was still black. His handsomeness didn't lose to the younger generation here. The sleeves of his robe drooped down and covered his hands. Even though his hands were empty, this person was like the sharpest sword in the world. Even when Pei Mufeng stood in front of him, his sharpness seemed to be overshadowed by him. Xiao Ran had already turned around and bowed respectfully to the person. Master. Mengqi didn't expect that the person Xiao Ran trusted the most was his master, the new sect leader of the space-breaking sect. Ling Ji was the one who had strangely stopped her and told her that her talent in swordsmanship wouldn't lose to anyone. Ling Ji's cold gaze swept around and finally landed on Mengqi's face. He was startled. When he opened his mouth, his voice was slightly hoarse. Little Mengqi. What is little Mengqi? Mengqi couldn't help but complain in her heart. She bowed to Ling Ji. Sect leader Ling, Good. Ling Ji was startled again, but still nodded. What are you guys doing? Mengqi glanced at Xiao Ran. The young man had already retreated to the side obediently. He lowered his head and closed his eyes like an old monk in meditation. His eyes were focused on his nose, and his nose was focused on his heart. He had made up his mind not to say anything. She had no choice but to explain the whole situation quickly. Finally, she said, so we might have to trouble sect leader Ling to help us deal with the people from the Earth Barracks. It's no big deal. Ling Ji nodded indifferently and said regretfully, it's a pity that I'm only at the perfection of the spirit-severing stage. If I could reach the insightful emptiness stage, even if it's only at the first level. He raised his chin slightly. His tone was light but full of pride. Not to mention that there are only 100 of them. Even if there are 1,000 of them, what's there to be afraid of? Xiao Ran. Mengqi bowed again. Thank you, sect leader Ling. She stood up. The first two people were unexpectedly successful. One was Ling Ji, and the other was Su Zijuan. It could be said that their combat power had doubled. There's one more person. Xue Chengxian looked at Mengqi. Mengqi, you're coming? Mengqi nodded. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. Who should she choose? Xing? She would definitely be very willing to go with her. Besides, Mengqi actually trusted Li Che a lot. Even though Li Che, like Lu Qing, ran a lot in her previous life, he was kind and had never hurt her. Actually, there was one more person. Mengqi's eyelids drooped slightly. Her long eyelashes drooped, covering the light in her eyes. The person she trusted the most was naturally Qing Yan's Henjun. But no, he probably couldn't be distracted now. She couldn't disturb him either. Mengqi thought as she raised her palm and pressed it lightly on the stardust stone. Xing. She thought in her heart that Xing was the best choice. He would definitely be very happy to be with them. Bits of starlight flew out from the stardust stone and entered Mengqi's chest. She felt a little strange, and even her chest seemed to have become much warmer. After a long time, the bits of starlight flew away from her body and entered the stardust stone. Ha! Mengqi suddenly heard the senior's voice again. Naive. She quickly looked around and found that everyone was looking at her quietly. It seemed that they didn't hear the voice at all. What naive! Meng-Chi was at a loss. However, before she could think more about it, the stardust stone made a soft sound and ripples appeared on the mirror-like stone. A slender hand stretched out from the stone. The hand definitely didn't look like a woman's hand. It was clean, beautiful, and the nails were neatly trimmed. However, it was obviously much bigger than Si Kongxing's hand. Meng-Chi's heart jumped to her throat. Thump, thump, thump. It instantly beat very fast. The girl in red didn't appear as she imagined. After the hand, what followed was a corner of a white-robed sleeve. Before Meng-Chi could think more, the white-robed man had already strode out of the stardust stone. Qing Qing Yanshenjun. Meng-Chi heard the senior's voice again. Haha, I said it's the person I trust the most, so it's the person I trust the most. Little brat, this is Shijua Mountain. Do you think it's a market? You still have to pick and choose for yourself. Naive. Meng-Chi. Yin Qingyan's gaze suddenly looked behind Meng-Chi. At the empty stone wall of the blessed enclave, Meng-Chi subconsciously followed his gaze but saw nothing. Damn. This little brat is actually getting more and more powerful. The voice suddenly exclaimed. I'm leaving. Enjoy your 48 hours, because you'll soon realize that this is your final happiness. Ha 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 ha. Amidst the extremely arrogant laughter, the voice seemed to be getting further and further away. Finally, it turned into a gentle breeze and disappeared. His last sentence was obviously heard by everyone. The few people in the blessed enclave didn't even have time to be curious about who Meng-Chi trusted the most with Yin Qingyan. They were fully alert first. Qing. Meng-Chi only called out one word before quickly shutting up. She wasn't sure if Yin Qingyan would be willing to let these people know his identity and life. Yin Qingyan heard this and looked at Meng-Chi. When he looked at the person from Shijua Mountain who spoke just now, his gaze was as cold as frost, causing that person to be unwilling to look directly at him. At this time, when he looked at Meng-Chi, the coldness had already dissipated. It was as if spring had returned to the land, warm and genial like the spring breeze. Little Chi? Yin Qingyan looked at Meng-Chi's troubled expression and called her gently. Meng-Chi. She immediately shuddered. What did Qing Yanshenjun call her? Little Chi. This. She was called Little Chi in the heavens beyond heaven, but she used to call the little white tiger Little Chi. She also knew that the little white tiger was Qing Yanshenjun. But it was still a little strange. Ling Ji's eyes darkened. His sharp and cold gaze sized up Yin Qingyan from head to toe, as if he couldn't wait to use this gaze to pierce countless small holes in her body, so that he could see her internal organs clearly. The person Meng-Chi trusted the most was this guy. He couldn't tell his cultivation level. Oh, this was only the perfected spirit severing stage, which meant that his cultivation level was at least above the perfected spirit severing stage. He also knew many young cultivators who were famous in the 3,000 worlds, especially those talented youths from large sections. Ling Ji knew almost all of them. This person obviously didn't belong to any large sections. Who was he? Why did Meng-Chi trust him so much? What was their relationship? Countless questions flashed through Ling Ji's mind instantly. If he didn't know that this 10 Extremes mountain test should be very important to Meng-Chi, he wanted to pull this guy out now and test his cultivation level first. He wanted to gain Meng-Chi's trust. If he wanted to call Meng-Chi Little Chi in front of him, then he had to get past him. Meng-Chi looked around and suddenly realized that everyone was looking at her, and Yin Qingyan. She didn't think much of it at first, but the other party just called her Little Chi. Meng-Chi's face turned red immediately. Qin Xiaoma. Lingji. Shueqingxian. Qiaoran. I'm a little scared. Master seems to be about to explode. Meng-Chi hurriedly pulled Yin Qingyan's sleeve and led him to a corner. She also knew that this place was only so big. No matter how soft her voice was, those people should be able to hear her. However, she still lowered her voice as much as possible and quickly explained the whole thing. In the end, Meng-Chi put his hands together and said apologetically, I'm sorry, Qing Yanshenjun. I asked Xingxing to come over, but the stardust stone refined by this Tianming flower still sent you over. She raised her hands high above her head and lowered her head with a red face. I'm sorry. You must be very busy right now. I shouldn't have disturbed you. It's okay. Yin Qingyan looked at Meng Qi in amusement. His voice could tell that he was in a good mood. I haven't started yet. We will only start after you finish here. Ah! Meng Qi's eyes widened in surprise. That's right. That's why I'm completely free now. I can help you fight this round. Yin Qingyan smiled. He finally couldn't help but reach out and gently place his hand on Meng Qi's head. He rubbed her hair in a good mood. Don't worry. I'm here. We'll definitely win. Thank you, Qingyan Henjun. Meng Qi stammered her thanks. Actually, she had never seen Yin Qingyan like this before. Even she could tell that Yin Qingyan was in a good mood right now. If he hadn't said it himself, the fight for the Demon Lord token had not started yet. Meng Qi would even think that he had already won this fight for the Demon Lord token. Don't worry. Yin Qingyan smiled at her and rubbed her hair again. Just be good and stay by my side. As he spoke, he held Meng Qi's hand and led her toward Ling Ji and the others. Let's go. We're leaving just like that? Ling Ji didn't speak, so Qiao Ran could only take the lead for his master. Otherwise, Yin Qingyan glanced at him and asked lazily. There are more than 100 people on the other side. Qiao Ran was stunned. He didn't know why, but the other party's strength was at the peak of the spirit-severing stage, just like him. But standing in front of this person, he felt as if he was standing in front of his master who was at full strength. That kind of strong and suffocating pressure. Even if this white-robed man looked lazy and didn't seem to be aggressive, he couldn't ignore it at all. Ha! Ha ha! This time, the laughter came from Yin Qingyan and Ling Ji at the same time. Qiao Ran. He'd better shut up obediently. Qin Xiuma's gaze fell on Yin Qingyan and Meng Qi's hands that were holding each other. Meng Qi, who is he? He suddenly asked. This time, everyone's eyes focused on Yin Qingyan again. Meng Qi turned to look at Yin Qingyan. In her nervousness, she didn't notice that she was holding hands with the other party, looking intimate and ambiguous. I'm her Dao companion, Yin Qingyan said. What? Ling Ji almost jumped up. With a clang, his narrow, almost transparent life-bound sword immediately appeared beside him. Tell who are you? Ling Ji's voice was colder and sharper than the blade. He looked at Yin Qingyan coldly. He definitely didn't agree to this. Just now, Qiao Ran had quickly told him what happened after entering 10 Extremes Mountain. His Meng Qi was innocent and kind. This guy had an unknown background. How could he be worthy of Meng Qi? Yin Qingyan smiled faintly. He flicked his finger, and a bit of starlight slowly rose from his fingertip. If you want to fight, then fight. He was just too lazy to fight in recent years, but he was never afraid of anyone. Meng Qi. Meng Qi, wait. She took a breath, looked at Qiao Ran, and then looked at Qin Xiuma and the others. She quickly said, this is a long story. Let's talk about it after we get out. She was explaining to Qin Xiuma. As for the others, Pei Mufeng probably wouldn't care who she became Dao companions with. Xue Qingxian, Su Zijuan, and Qiao Ran weren't very familiar with her either. As for Yan Xian, he probably couldn't be bothered with this kind of gossip. She has the final say. Yin Qingyan smiled faintly, not caring at all. Meng Qi, little. Meng Qi. Ling Ji called out unwillingly. Who is he? Were you deceived by him? Deceived. Meng Qi was stunned. She subconsciously took a step forward and stood in front of Yin Qingyan, facing Ling Ji herself. She knew that Yin Qingyan was very powerful, very powerful. She also knew that Ling Ji was also very powerful. However, no matter how powerful she was, she might still be a little weaker than Yin Qingyan. Ling Ji definitely couldn't hurt her. She was completely subconscious. Before she could react, her body had already moved. He wouldn't deceive me. Meng Qi's voice was slightly low, but it was extremely firm. He definitely wouldn't. She repeated in a low voice. Ling Ji. Meng Qi's eyes were clear and calm. She looked directly at Ling Ji without fear. Actually, she was very polite. From the beginning to the end, she treated Ling Ji with the etiquette of a junior. At first, she thought that the Void Breaker sect was looking for her with ill intentions. At this moment, She didn't mean to attack or offend her at all. However, Ling Ji inexplicably saw 2 words of determination in her clear eyes. Reverse scale. It was as if the white-robed youth she subconsciously protected behind her, who was clearly more powerful than her, was her reverse scale. Even someone as calm and elegant as Meng Qi would show her protective side when her reverse scale was touched. He was a little envious. Ling Ji suddenly exhaled softly. He knew what happened in the boundary of the apricot forest competition. He even knew how Meng Qi entered Cool Breeze Valley, why she left there, and how she came to this point. Perhaps this was what it meant to be pure and honest. She would protect the people she wanted to protect. She would adhere to her own path. She would return the favor with a peach. Slowly, she had these trustworthy companions who supported each other by her side. She even had a Dao companion now. Ling Ji suddenly felt a little dispirited. Meng Qi didn't need him at all. Meng Qi really didn't need him at all now. She had already relied on herself to enter the top competition among the young cultivators in the 3,000 worlds. She could stand shoulder to shoulder with Pei Mufeng, his disciple Qiao Ran, and Xue Chengxian of the Wind Alliance. When they got out of here, she wouldn't need him even more. Shizhuan. Qiao Ran suddenly called out to his Shizhuan in a low voice. Ling Ji finally came back to his senses. He looked up. Meng Qi and the others had already walked a short distance away. Only Qiao Ran was still obediently waiting beside him, who was immersed in his memories. Let's go. Ling Ji waved his hand, and his life-bond longsword returned to his spiritual sea. Yes. Qiao Ran walked beside him respectfully. It was a little quiet along the way. Meng Qi and Yun Qingyan walked side by side. Pei Mufeng and Su Zijuan walked on the left and right respectively. Their life-bond longswords also floated on their sides. Qin Xioma walked silently on the other side of Meng Qi, slightly further away from her and Yun Qingyan. Xue Chengxian was a little behind the two. About 3 steps behind him was Yan Xian. Ling Ji and Xiao Ran were at the back, some distance away from everyone. Shizhuan. Xiao Ran secretly glanced at his Shizhuan. In fact, his Shizhuan didn't deliberately hide the matter between Meng Qi and his Shizhuan, so he could more or less guess. He had followed Ling Ji for a long time, and had always been the disciple he admired the most. Ling Ji treated him very well, so he could more or less guess his Shizhuan's thoughts. What's the matter? Ling Ji asked lightly. His tone sounded rather forced, as if he had lost interest in everything in an instant. In my first year, I was the last in the 700 disciples assessment, but Shizhuan liked me and took me in. I have always been grateful. Qiao Ran suddenly said. You have talent. I can see your talent. It's nothing, Ling Ji said. My talent gradually showed after practicing the sword for a year, Qiao Ran said. But in the first major assessment 3 months after entering the sect, no one was willing to take me in. In the assessment half a year later, I still failed. In the assessment in September, no one was interested in me, and I was the last in the assessment again. Qiao Ran smiled bitterly. Later, Shizhuan also said that my perseverance was also one of my talents. He wasn't a true genius like Yan Xian, Pei Mufeng, or Qin Xioma here. He wasn't the kind of genius who would amaze people as soon as he stepped onto the path of cultivation. In the first year of Qiao Ran's sword cultivation, he was looked down upon. If it wasn't for his extremely firm mind, he would have almost given up. Then now, there probably wasn't the first disciple of the Broken Void sect who finally mastered his sword arts and completed his natal sword, shocking the entire West Kingdom with a single sword strike. So he could actually understand Ling Ji's sudden desolation. Geniuses almost never suffered setbacks. For example, when he was young, his Shizhuan Ling Ji had once shocked the world with a single sword strike, causing countless beauties and experts to scramble for him. He probably never experienced the feeling of being unappreciated and unvalued when he was willing to show goodwill. Ling Ji suddenly froze. He stopped walking and turned to look at his disciple. Qiao Ran didn't dare to raise his head, only daring to quietly look at the tip of his shoes. Huh. Ling Ji suddenly reached out and patted Qiao Ran's shoulder, striding forward. Little Meng Qi. Ling Ji walked to Meng Qi's side, pushing Qin Xioma to the side. What are your plans? Meng Qi turned to look at him. Seeing Ling Ji's expression return to normal, he said, "We're going to go take a look at the situation at the Earth Barracks." As they spoke, the group had already followed the mountain path to the mountain peak. The paradise they were at just now was originally very close to the mountain peak. At this time, the 9 people walked to the edge of the cliff at the mountain peak, overlooking the earth, feeling full of pride. Then Meng-Chi couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Opposite them was another mountain, but that mountain was much shorter. The mountain peak was a large piece of flat land, on which stood a small city. Although the city wasn't big, it had city walls, watchtowers, everything one could think of. In addition, the mountain path was steep, and the city was surrounded by cliffs on 3 sides. Only one side had a road leading to the city. The terrain looked very steep, easy to defend and difficult to attack. This is a bit of a joke. Xiao Ren had already returned to normal. He was more familiar with the others now. Even in front of Master, he was much more lively than when Meng-Chi first met him. "There are defensive Dharma treasures on the city walls," Su Zijuan said. He was also a member of the Earth Barracks and had stayed in the city before. "You can use Dharma treasures to activate the defensive array on the city walls. The array is very old. There are also disciples of the Heavenly Sea Pavilion and the Broken Space sect in the Earth Barracks, but they can't recognize what the array is. They only know that its defensive ability is very strong, and I'm afraid it's very difficult to break." Ming-Chi. She silently glanced at Yun Qingyan. In front of probably the strongest array master in the world, there wouldn't be an array that couldn't be broken. Even if it was an array against an array, she believed that Yun Qingyan wouldn't lose. Receiving her gaze, Yun Qingyan lowered his hand and held her hand again. Meng-Chi blushed again. She still felt that it was a bit strange. In front of so many people, holding hands with Qingyan's Henjun, there was a kind of... She couldn't describe it. It wasn't hate nor was it fear. In short, it was very, very strange. It made her feel that she should break free. But she also felt that there was nothing wrong with holding hands like this, as long as he was happy. Yun Qingyan was obviously happy. He waved his hand. "The array is nothing to worry about." Su Zijuan. He looked at his senior brother. He didn't know how to respond. "That's right." Ling Ji also stepped forward and stood on the other side of Meng-Chi. He looked down at the city and said nonchalantly, "The array is nothing to worry about." Su Zijuan. He knew who Ling Ji was. He was the big shot who injured 5 of his senior brothers with a long sword, and took the position of sect master of the Voidbreaker sect that had been vacant for 10 years. He was also the one who shocked the 4 realms when he was young. Even though the Voidbreaker sect was known for its sword array, he still single-handedly suppressed all the sword cultivators of the same generation in the 3 realms. Alright, he was nothing to worry about. Su Zijuan was silent for a moment and continued. "There are 3 main checkpoints in the city. Not counting the defensive array on the city wall, there is a stone pillar at each of the 4 gates. The east, west, north, and south are connected and can release different spells: wind, rain, thunder, and lightning with amazing power. Further in, there is a poison array formed by poisonous insects and flowers. Inside the poison array is a sword array, and the sword array is guarding the city lord's mansion." Su Zijuan said in one breath. "According to the rules, we have to get the city lord's mansion to successfully attack the city. So..." He paused for a moment. Actually, he shouldn't be the one to speak here, but he was the only one who went into the city. Fortunately, he was here. Otherwise, the attackers would definitely be attacked by the wind, rain, thunder, and lightning spell stone pillars as soon as they attacked the city. Even if they were lucky enough to enter the city, they would easily fall into the trap of the poison array. Not to mention, there was still the extremely powerful sword array behind. Then don't we have to wait here for 48 hours and wait for the situation to change? Then it would be easier for us to defend the city? Xue Qingxian frowned. Why did he feel that this sounded like an impossible mission to complete? Even if they added the 3 reinforcements, they only had 9 people here. "I'm afraid not." Su Zijuan shook his head. The defensive array, spellstone pillars, poison array, and sword array are indeed powerful, but they all need cultivators to activate. We have too few people. He explained, for example, the spell stone pillars of the wind, rain, thunder, and lightning spell stone pillars. If we want them to help us attack the enemy, each stone pillar needs 4 people to inject spirit energy at the same time to activate the power inside. It's the same for the arrays on the 4 city walls. Each wall needs 3 people. The poison array needs 6 people, and the sword array needs 9 people. Su Zijuan said. If there are only 9 of us, we can only retreat and defend the sword array. But if there are too many of them, the sword array can't continue to protect us if one of us is injured. He shook his head. If there are too few people, those things won't work. No wonder we attacked the city first. Xue Qingxian pondered and said. One of the rules is that if the people we injured are saved by Meng Qi or me, they will be considered as people on our side. This way, we can use the 48 hours to think of a way to increase the number of people on our side. Qin Xioma said. If we gather the power of 9 people, we can attack 1 wall. That's right. Xue Qingxian nodded. The 5 of us can attack 1 wall. Yan Xian suddenly said. The 3 of them were all nurtured as future sect masters by the sect. They were quite talented in commanding. They know we have 9 people on our side. If all 9 of us attack together, they won't have anything to worry about. They don't need to defend the city lord's mansion, the sword array, or the poison array. They don't even need to defend the other 3 walls. Yan Xian said. They have more people. This is disadvantageous for us. That's right. Xue Qingxian nodded. Other than Ling Ji, Qiao Ran, and Yin Qingyan, everyone here knew the reason why Yan Xian was injured. He naturally wouldn't look down on the young master of Mirror Moon Heaven who was only at Qi Refinement Realm. Xue Qingxian pondered for a moment and said, Mi Dao is Qin, Sect Master Pei Dao is Su, and... He turned to look at Ling Ji. He didn't dare to command the Sect Master of Broken Space Sect, their senior. Me, Ling Ji said. Are you sure you want me to appear from the start? He suddenly curled his lips and looked at Xue Qingxian with a smile that wasn't a smile. Are you sure you don't want to give them a surprise? If Senior suddenly appears and attacks one of the walls, they will definitely be very surprised. Xue Qingxian bowed respectfully to Ling Ji. This way, we might be able to take advantage of them. This can also be considered a surprise. Right? He said politely to Ling Ji. Moreover, when they see Senior here, they won't immediately remember that Senior's cultivation is currently sealed at the perfected spirit severing stage. With Senior's reputation, we should be able to catch them off guard. All right. Ling Ji nodded slightly. Suddenly he glanced at Yin Qingyan. You come with me, he suddenly said. All right. Yin Qingyan also nodded. Then little Qi replaced Xue Qingxian. He slightly raised his chin at Xue Qingxian. This, Xue Qingxian muttered. Even if Ling Ji was here, even if they could catch the other party off guard, the other party had more than 10 times their number after all. He was a little worried about Meng Qi. All right. Meng Qi had already nodded. But Meng Qi... Before Xue Qingxian could finish speaking, Yin Qingyan had already interrupted him. He looked at the eldest son of the Xue family of the Wind Alliance. He was the master of the heavens beyond heaven. No rumors in the 3,000 worlds could escape his ears. Moreover, Xue Qingxian, this brat, rolled his eyes. Even if he was blind, he wouldn't be able to see that he harbored ill intentions towards Meng Qi. I personally taught her. Yin Qingyan's tone was slightly cold. He looked at Xue Qingxian with a faint smile. She's more useful than you. Xue Qingxian. Moreover, Yin Qingyan said, in the face of such an array attack, I can still protect her. His tone even sounded a little arrogant. If it were someone else, Xue Qingxian might feel that the other party was a little arrogant. However, he had also come out of the Starfall Sea with Meng Qi and the others. From the words of Su Junmo and Si Kongxing, he had already vaguely guessed the identity of the man who had an ambiguous relationship with Meng Qi. Xue Qingxuan's hands clenched slightly at his sides, but he quickly relaxed them. There was no trace of unhappiness on his face. If this was really the important person he guessed, as the future master of the Xue family, he couldn't be offended, even for the sake of the family. All right. He was silent for a moment before replying in a deep voice. Yin Qingyan seemed to have guessed that he would do this. He smiled lightly and walked to the edge of the cliff with Meng Qi's hand. Wind, rain, thunder, and lightning pillars, then the poisonous insect array, then the sword array. He whispered to Meng Qi, "What do you think, DDXS? Calm the four extremes?" Meng Qi blurted out in a low voice. "That's right." Yin Qingyan smiled faintly and looked down at the city. He spoke to Meng Qi in a gentle tone, but his gaze wasn't soft at all. "It's a little interesting. Also," he suddenly paused. Meng Qi waited for a moment but didn't hear anything else. He subconsciously asked, "What?" "He doesn't like you." Yin Qingyan's voice was even lower. "What he loves most is his family, power, and status, and probably the position of the future leader of the Wind Alliance. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.